And we are live. Thanks everyone for stopping by again to Duzang's Jaw Jacking. Today we got another religion burrito with you with the side of Duzang taco, hard shell. We're going to talk about how the New Testament relates to the Old Testament. We got our guest today, the returning champion, Yehuda, and new challenger, worthy challenger, Courtney. And before we get started, watch this. Courtney, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start off. So, all right, guys, my name is Courtney. I am a Christian. I'm what you would call a Hebrew roots Christian. That means that I am a Torah observant Christian. So I just wanted to go ahead and kind of discuss what I wanted the debate to be so that everyone was aware. So in the debate, we are going to discuss Isaiah 7 and Melchizedek. Now, one thing that I wanted to get across is that we're not going to be using any Jewish literature outside of the Old Testament and the New Testament. The reason why I think it's just best that we prove our points from the Tanakh and the New Testament. Now, the New Testament is on trial. I am here as its lawyer. I recognize that the New Testament is on trial, and in order for the New Testament to be on trial, it has to be able to speak for itself. In other words, what does this mean? That the New Testament needs to be able to say what it has said in a way that when we look at it, we can't use the New Testament against itself. What does that mean? That means when the New Testament says something about Isaiah 7, we have to go back and look at it. But then elsewhere in the New Testament, we can't say, oh, well, we believe this about Jesus, but we don't believe that. So we either believe everything the New Testament says about Jesus and Israel and everything in the book, or we don't. And so I'm here to present the New Testament in light of Old Testament passages. So basically, that's pretty much my opening statement. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Yehuda so he can give his opening statement.
Well, thank you, Courtney. Yeah, I am Yehuda Yisrael, and like I said before in the previous debate, I'm I guess what you would call a modern Orthodox Jew, Baal Tshuva, somebody who grew up less religious but became more religious over time. And yeah, of course, I agree to the stipulations that Courtney has made, and we will be using the Tanakh to evaluate Isaiah 7:14 and probably go on to more topics regarding the New Testament and its relation to the Tanakh. And of course, my position as a more traditional religious Jew is that I don't believe that Jesus fulfilled Isaiah 7:14. And I think it's going to surround more of a, let me rephrase that. I'm not going to say that it's impossible for it to have a future context. However, I understand it to have an immediate context in Isaiah's time. And yeah, Courtney, if you would like to give your position on that, I welcome that so that you can, if you would like to give the context and sort of your position on why you think it applies exclusively to Jesus or the Messiah or your position, which that's my assumption. That's the direction you're going to take with it.
Yeah, so I have been challenged to present Isaiah 7 and Isaiah 8 and 9 because these passages cannot be read separately. They have to be read together as if you were telling a story. So I've been challenged by Yehuda to prove that the passage by which the New Testament quotes from the Tanakh, which is Isaiah 7:14, to be exclusively about Yeshua HaMashiach. And I plan to do that. Now, The one thing that I want everyone to realize is that I have videos on this. I recognize that there is a historical application, but I take a different approach than most within Christianity. Now, most within mainstream Christianity, they find passages and they say, oh, well, this is about Jesus. Why? Because the New Testament says so. My job as a lawyer would be to prove why the New Testament is correct in its being on trial. And so if we look at the,
like to give the,
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. Just some feedback. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. So if we look at the entire passage, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you a synopsis of what this is about, a brief synopsis. I'm going to tell you what the passage is telling you, and then I'll allow Yehuda to come in and say where he thinks I'm wrong. So this is going to be kind of fluid back and forth conversation as opposed to a more structured debate. And I think it'll work better that way. That way, if you guys have any questions in your mind as I'm speaking, these questions are popping up and you're not having to wait 15 minutes to get Yehuda's response. Feedback again?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so Isaiah 7 is a passage that we're all pretty familiar with, especially verse 14. If you look at the passage, it becomes very clear that you have a civil war going on. And the civil war is what is worrying Ahaz. Ahaz is the king of Judah, and he's worried that the northern tribes were going to come in and do something. And basically what they're going to come in and do is make the son of Tabeel king over them. Now, why is this worrisome? Because if you look at the passage, it clearly tells you this is what they're worried about. He says in verse 6, let us invade Judah. Let us tear it apart and divide it amongst ourselves and make the son of Tabeel king over it. Yet this is what the sovereign Lord says. It will not take place. It will not happen. So if you continue to read, you get the idea that the Lord is telling Ahaz, calm down. It's not going to happen. Yet Ahaz is biting his nails, worried, sick that it was going to happen. What is he worried over? Again, that they are going to come in and seat someone else as king over Judah. Now, if you look back at passages in the Bible, and we have to realize that we have these prophets that didn't come to bring anything new, that they presented everything that was already in the Torah, because if they brought anything new, then they fail as being a prophet of Israel. They have to expound on what was already in the Torah. And what we find as already being in the Torah that would give Ahaz an idea of the issue that would have been a problem if they did come in and seat someone as a king over Judah would have been found in Genesis 49:10, where it clearly tells us that the scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he to whom it belongs shall come, and the obedience of the nation shall be his. This is also found in Numbers 24:17. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star will come out of Jacob, and a scepter will rise out of Israel. He will crush the foreheads of Moab and the skulls of all the people of Shith. Now, if you continue to read throughout the Bible, you get this same exact pattern in the Psalms. So we find this in Psalm 45, where this figure, as Psalm 45 says, is a very unique figure. It's not one that is commonly discussed. In other words, it says, your scepter of your reign is a scepter of straightness, for you have loved righteousness and hated wickedness. Therefore, God, your God, has anointed you with the oil of gladness more than your companions. As we move on into Psalm 60, verses 5-7, but pay particular attention to 1-7. I want you to understand that there's something that's being built upon here. Verses 5-7, save us and help us with your right hand. Those that love you may be delivered. God has spoken from his sanctuary. In triumph, I will parcel out Shechem and measure off the valley of Sukkot. Gilead is mine, and Manasseh is mine. Ephraim is my helmet, and Judah is my scepter. So the picture that you should be getting right now is that there is a scepter that will rule and will be in ruling until the one to whom it comes, or to whom shall come, it will be turned over to. In many translations, that is Shiloh or Shiloh. So I want you to understand what is being presented here is that Ahaz was worried that the tribal lineage, which would bring forth the Messiah, was going to be lost. That is what he was worried about. He was scared to death that the son of Tabeel was going to break or thwart the promise of God, which is that the scepter would always be with Judah until the Messiah would come. Now, how or why would he be scared of this? Why is he not, as what is a common objection from the Jewish perspective, is no, he's worried about war. No, he's not worried about war, because we find in the latter part, God says, just know that that's not going to happen. But guess what is going to happen? You will then hear, house of David. Notice he says, house of David, again, speaking to Judah, letting you know that this is a prophecy. Hear, you house of David. Just know I'm going to send Assyria. So they're not worried about war. That's absolutely not what he's concerned with. He's concerned about the fact that the promise of God, the scepter, would have been thwarted. And God clearly tells him in many other passages throughout the Bible that we now read today collectively that it would not happen and that God has enthroned his king already. And it's not something that you will be able to stop. So when we look at the historical application of this, we see that, in fact, we are given a timeline. Why does Isaiah give us a timeline of 65 years? He gives us the timeline in the passage, 65 years. Now, we know that the 65 years would have been the time where the prophecy started and ended. And so it would have been irrelevant for Isaiah to mention in Isaiah 7, 65 years if it wasn't important. But we know that Assyria comes in, carries them off, and then in 2 Kings, we find that, in fact, Assyria did come in, and Assyria did carry off Israel. And Assyria comes in during the time of Hezekiah. And guess what? Hezekiah says, what can I do? What can I give you? What can I do to make this stop? And Assyria says very boastfully, but honestly, do you think that you can stop yourself from falling into my hand? Your own God gave me to come to overthrow you. But we know that they weren't fully overthrown. Why? Because God tells us, not only for the sake of David, but for his own sake. And that is found in 2 Kings 8. Nevertheless, for the sake of his servant David, the Lord was not willing to destroy Judah. He had promised to maintain a lamp for David and his descendants forever. You move into 2 Kings 20, verse 6. I will add 15 years to your life, and I will deliver you and this city from the hand of the king of Assyria. I will defend this city for my sake and for the sake of my servant David. Now, interesting, notice that in 2 Kings 8:19, it explicitly says that God promised something. What is the promise? The promise is to maintain a lamp. Now, I will get into this later, but I want to go ahead and give you a hint at what that lamp may be. Psalm 119, 105. Your word is a lamp for my feet and a light to my path. Now, we will dive into that whenever we move into other passages. But as you look, you become very familiar with what is going on. And it's that the promise of God that the Messiah would come through the lineage of Judah would not be thwarted, that no other king would sit there. It would be Judah's until the one to whom it belonged came. And as we move down into the passage, we see that Isaiah 7:14 cannot be any other person than the Messiah. Now, who is chapter 8 and 9 about? Chapter 8 and 9 gives you a multifaceted look at the job or the life of the Messiah. So if you look at the passage, you start to get an idea that Isaiah has a son, and then Isaiah has another son. And just like with Hosea, these are symbolic of things to come. These children were named, just like Hosea's children were named, to be symbolic, not for that time only, but for the future to come. So we know that Mahar Shalal Hashbahaz, quick plunder or swift spoil, is just like when Hosea names his children, not my people. And it's not interesting enough to note, but many don't, that Hosea in the timeline of things comes first. And then Isaiah 7 picks up after Hosea 1. And so as we're looking at all of this, you start to get a very clear picture that this is a very messianic and prophetic passage. And it leads us into Isaiah 8. And then it takes us even further into Isaiah 9, where we have this picture of no more gloom in the future, that God will honor the Galilee, which is, interestingly enough, the home of Yeshua, by the way of the sea. No more gloom, because the people walking there in darkness have seen light. Keep that in your back pocket as well. Light is a very important word. This is also what Matthew says about the Messiah. And then we're back in Isaiah 9. It says, you have increased the nation and their joy. Now, there is an alternative reading to this for Isaiah 9, verse 3. But verse 4 describes how God saved Israel, and not of Israel's own doing, but just like he did in the day of Midian. Now, if you've never seen that passage, you'll have to look on over to Judges 6 and 7. But a brief synopsis is this. The Lord said to Gideon, the people with you are too many for me to give the Midians into your hand, lest Israel boast over me, saying, my own hand has saved me. Judges 7:2. God makes these references so that you know that this is a salvational issue. This passage speaks, in fact, these three passages, Isaiah 7, 8, and 9, speak of salvational issues, that the Messiah was to be born of a virgin. And we will get into this more when Yehuda comes in. But I want you to note the overall theme of what Isaiah 7, 8, and 9 is about. So God wants you to know that he uses the humble and the meek to overthrow. Many Jews are expecting a reigning king to come right now and to destroy their enemies, but that's not how God saves. God often uses the humble and the meek first, and he used Yeshua in the same way. He then describes what seems to be the destruction of the second temple in Isaiah 9. Yes, you are projected that far into the future. Verse 5 says that they're under authority, not their own, that the Savior comes and frees them from bondage of sin, which is the reason for all exile. So I want you to understand that we are in exile because of our sin. And you can never come out of exile unless the sin problem is dealt with. And the sin problem can only be dealt with when there is a perfect atoning sacrifice that brings forth everlasting life, the resurrection. This seems to be a passage that not only applies in their time, again, through all exiles, we have the same problem, sin. But Isaiah clearly said that he was symbolic for things to come. My reasoning for not thinking that it's solely Assyria in the time of Isaiah is because many passages in Isaiah and elsewhere do we find that Assyria is used in the prophetic end days. This is not something that we can ignore. So one of the reasons, again, for thinking that it's not solely Assyria is that there is the yoke of burden that is mentioned here in chapter 9. It seems to be a sin reference, as we find in Psalm 38 and 40, which tell us about the one that eases that burden, which is interesting because in Matthew 11, verse 30, Yeshua says, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. That is, of course, the Messiah, who is said to have the government rest on this Judaic king's shoulders forever. Now, I'm sure Yehuda will bring up the Alma, and we will certainly discuss this. I plan to fully expound on the Alma, but I wanted to go ahead and give you an overall synopsis of both or all 3 chapters, so that you can get an idea of how this becomes prophetic and how it is that Isaiah 7 verse 14 could be about no one other than the Messiah, whom the New Testament tells you is Jesus, Yeshua HaMashiach. Yehuda, your turn.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Courtney. Yeah, so that segues perfectly into my position on Isaiah 7:14. So thank you for your explanation of what's going on contextually. King Ahaz is effectively scared of these 2 kingdoms conspiring together, to basically overthrow him. And what ends up happening is Isaiah is giving, as a prophet, to King Ahaz an opportunity to ask for a sign. Ahaz says, I don't want to test the Lord. Isaiah says, oh, well, you don't want to test him, but I'll give you a sign anyway. And then we segue into Isaiah 7:14. Now, I want to give a premise for my position on this. Occam's razor is a interesting philosophy, right? Parsimony. When we look at what Isaiah has to say, he's speaking on behalf of God. We both agree, me and Courtney, that Isaiah's words would reign king over any of our eisegetical or, forced interpretations of what we think Isaiah is saying. So my argument at its core is simply reading Isaiah and taking him at face value. So what ends up happening is so let's look at Isaiah 7:14. I guess I can screen share it. And I made a Word document here. I'll just screen share kind of like what's going on so you guys can see precisely what I am. Actually, no, is that going to pop up? Either way. So let's see. I thought that was going to show up, but I guess it's not. Anyway, I can just read from Isaiah 7:14. Yeah, okay, perfect. That works. So it says, therefore, the Lord of his own shall give you a sign. Behold, the young woman, Alma, Courtney would say it's a virgin, is with child, and she shall bear a son, and she shall call his name Immanuel. And then Isaiah 7:15 says, cream and honey he shall eat when he knows to reject the bad and choose the good. And then Isaiah 7:16, for when the lad does not know yet to reject the bad and choose the good, the land whose 2 kings you dread, right, who King Ahaz dreads, shall be abandoned. So I'd challenge Courtney when she says he's not worried about these kings attacking him, or war, or whatever word you want to use for it. He's clearly dreading them. That is what Isaiah 7:16 says specifically. So it would be, if you're going to say that he wasn't worried about these kings, declaring war on him and overthrowing him, then that would be your word against Isaiah's, because Isaiah's effectively saying this is what the issue is in King Ahaz's time. And that is what the sign of this birth of this son is supposed to be. So keeping verse 16 in mind, it's crucial to the context of Isaiah in the next chapter. So now we're going to go to Isaiah chapter 8. So that gives us a picture of what the fulfillment of this prophecy is. So Isaiah 8:3, I was intimate with the prophetess, and she conceived, and she bore a son. And the Lord said to me, call his name Maher Shahal Hashbaz. And then the next verse says, Isaiah 8:4, for when the lad does not know to call father and mother, see that parallel for Isaiah 7:16? For when the lad does not know to reject the bad and choose the good, and then in Isaiah 4, it says, the wealth of Damascus and the plunder of Samaria shall be carried off before the king of Assyria, which is, of course, referring to the fact that the 2 kings from the northern kingdoms will be destroyed by the king of Assyria. As Courtney mentioned, that's what happened in the time of King Hezekiah. So what do you know? Isaiah said a young woman would give birth to a child, and in the very next chapter, his wife has a son. Prophecy fulfilled. Now, the interesting thing about that is Isaiah explicitly says he was intimate with her. This means that this Alma, described in Isaiah 7:14, is Isaiah's wife. Moreover, she's not a virgin. It says he was intimate with her. Thus, the word Alma does not exclusively refer to women who are virgins. Isaiah says it himself. And if you're still not convinced, here's a statement directly from Isaiah saying his sons are signs, okay? And I really want to pull this one up, so let me look for Isaiah 8 here, because I think this is crucial, because I think I heard Courtney, if I'm not mistaken, mention that he said these are signs of things to come. That's not what I see the text saying. Now, if you want it to be about things to come, that's fine, but the actual text doesn't say that. It says, behold, I and the children whom the Lord gave me for signs and tokens in Israel from the Lord of hosts who dwells on Mount Zion. So that's Isaiah 8, verse 18. Yeah, I think you need to scroll down a little bit to see it. Yeah, Isaiah 8, verse 18. It doesn't say this is exclusive to things to come. It doesn't give us any implication of that. It's very clearly stating this is the point of the sign of the sons is for Israel. And why, and I guess I would ask Courtney, what would be the point of Isaiah mentioning the birth of his son and that he was intimate with the prophetess if it had nothing to do with his previous prophecy about this child being born to this Alma? Was he just doing this for fun? Did he I don't know. You don't really see this elsewhere in the Tanakh that I understand where prophets are just, casually mentioning that they were intimate with their wives and that they had a son and making a huge ordeal about it. So I just don't understand how we can ignore the immediate fulfillment of Isaiah's son's birth as having any relevance to the prophecy of Isaiah 7:14. So basically, my position is that the natural birth of Isaiah's son was a fulfillment of the sign of Isaiah 14, namely that his wife would give birth to a son, and that before he knew the difference between good and evil, father and mother, right? Compare those two verses, Isaiah 7:16 and Isaiah 8:4, very reminiscent of each other. The wealth of Damascus and the plunder of Samaria will be carried off before the king of Assyria or the two kings who you dread. It's describing the same scenario, right? So the only viable option for you is to argue for a dual fulfillment regarding Matthew's application of the supposed virgin birth to Yeshua. As we know, the beginning of the New Testament, this is the first prophecy, this is the supposed to be the standard for what we judge the Messiah by, according to the New Testament. This is, Matthew's opening statement. Oh, this is the fulfillment of Isaiah 7:14, and the premise that it's referring to a virgin. But now you have to concede that the word Alma does not exclusively refer to a virgin, right? Because Isaiah basically lays it out for us and says, this is, my wife is the Alma, and my sons are the signs. And it doesn't have a exclusively future connotation. So this shows the lack of exclusivity of the word Alma and demystifies the Yeshua believers' obsession with the birth needing to be miraculous in order to see fulfillment. In other words, Isaiah 7:14 really, if you want to say that it has to do with the Messiah, I'm not going to say it doesn't. But if you want to ignore the fact that it refers to the birth of Isaiah's son, then you are going against Isaiah's own words, right? So that means the word Alma, based off Isaiah himself, does not exclusively mean virgin. So, like I said, if you want to go the dual fulfillment route, fine. But it's not going to, basically, this proves definitively that the word Alma is not exclusive to a virgin. So that's my case for that.
Okay, so I wanted to go ahead and let it be known that I am absolutely not saying that the verse of Isaiah 7:14 is a dual fulfillment. That was fulfilled only in Yeshua HaMashiach. That's it. So what am I saying then? I'm trying to get you to look at the passage how it was meant to be interpreted as a messianic passage. Why? So a friend of mine, we were discussing this and we were talking, and he had a great analogy. It would be like you're Ahaz and you're sitting in a room that's running out of oxygen. Literally, you're trapped in a room and it's running out of oxygen. And God says, don't worry. You're going to have a turkey sandwich on the road to Assyria. And you wonder, no, God, you're not understanding. I'm running out of oxygen right now. I need you to do something right now. And God says, I've told you, don't worry. You're going to eat a turkey sandwich on the road to Assyria. Now, that may not make sense, right? But what is God saying? It will not happen. God is effectively telling you that by the time the Messiah is born, to whom this passage refers, the one that I said would come through the Alma, the land of the kings of which you fear won't even be a people anymore. Remember the timeline of 65 years? Why were we given a timeline of 65 years if not for the idea that in only 65 years, this would be done and over with? That's like saying in just a few moments, you're going to be taken out of the room that has no oxygen. No worries, only 65 years. So this is how this passage can apply to Yeshua, who would come 700 years later. Because by the time Yeshua came, the land which he dread was done and over with. Done, kaput. Not a problem anymore. Now, Alma. So I'd like to ask you, Yehuda, so we can have a conversation here. Are you aware that every single time in the Bible that Alma is used, it is used exclusively of a woman who is a virgin, and it cannot be proven that the woman was not a virgin?
I just gave you an example where that's not the case, because Isaiah says that he was intimate with his wife. Like, my question to you was, why is Isaiah mentioning being intimate with his wife? Like, isn't it curious that he would make a prophecy about a woman giving birth to a son and use the exact same, like, starkingly parallel language regarding the destruction of the two kingdoms and saying that's specifically what the sign is for? Why would Isaiah do that if the birth of his son in the next chapter has nothing to do with it? What is your explanation for that?
Because Isaiah 7, 8, and 9 are messianic passages about the future Messiah, the scepter, the promise of God to come 700 years from the time of Isaiah. Now,
I'm not disagreeing with that necessarily. I'm saying, why would Isaiah mention the birth of his son? Like, do you see anywhere else in scripture? I haven't seen it.
Yes.
I haven't seen prophets going around talking about being intimate with their wife. Maybe Hosea. You have that with the birth of his children. Sure.
Okay, let's park it there.
But why would we ignore? Because that was a message that was for his time and for the future. We're not saying, oh, this has nothing to do with his time, right? Because Israel was obstinate. That was the reason why the son was named that particular name, right? So why would Isaiah's prophecy have nothing to do with, his birth of his children? Why would that have nothing to do with what was mentioned in the previous chapter about someone giving birth to a son?
Because it is a messianic prophecy, and it is a message to what the Messiah would do. Remember when I mentioned the yoke of the burden of sin? So in other words,
Courtney, how do you define a messianic prophecy, right? Because that's what we need to understand, is that I don't have a problem with this being ultimately messianic, but there's other prophecies I think that we would agree refer exclusively to the Messiah, son of David, and no one else. For example, like Hosea, for example, in that same example, Hosea chapter 3, verse 5 says, afterwards the children of Israel shall return and seek the Lord their God and David their king, and they shall come trembling to the Lord and to his goodness at the end of days. Is this talking about anyone else but the Messiah when it says David their king?
No, that's the Messiah.
Exactly. Why do we agree on that? Why do you think that is? Why are we looking at Isaiah 7:14 and saying, well, this might, have a messianic application, and why do you think I'm fighting against you saying that it also has, basically Hosea 3:5, it gives us a context. It says at the end of days, and it says Davidic king. So that's a no-brainer. It's only about the Messiah. But then you have Isaiah 7:14, which doesn't fit either of those. It doesn't say it's going to happen later necessarily. Like it says, this is happening now.
Not true. I can prove that if you'll give me a chance. So Isaiah 7. Okay. So what I'm trying to get you to understand is that Isaiah 7, 8, and 9 are specifically addressing things that would have already been stated in the Torah, the scepter, which is the Messiah. So with that being said, I'm going to answer your question. Why is it that Isaiah says, I made love to the prophetess? I'll explain it. In the same way that Hosea, his children are used as symbolic references to a future time, which you and I both agreed is the Messiah. Yes. And names them specific names that give a message to the people who read the Bible. Jezreel, God sows. Lo Ramah, no mercy. Lo Ami, not my people. Isaiah picks up right where Hosea leaves off. And then all of a sudden, you have Maher Shalah Hashbahaz, quick, spoil, swift prey, give or take how it's translated. And then Sha'ir Yeshuv, remnant will return. That is the gospel message. That is the gospel message right there. And it's unfortunate because it's been missed. Not only is it missed by your side, but I'm going to be frank and say that it's missed quite frequently by Christians as well, because they focus only on Isaiah 7:14. They don't focus on the broader spectrum of it. Isaiah said that this is how you would know. And how do I know that it's symbolic? Because as I've mentioned numerous times, that goes, I don't know, ignored, I guess. Alma. Everyone says if God wanted to say a virgin, he would have said Betula. Not true. Not true at all. Absolutely not true. So Alma, every single time in the Bible, I challenge every single Jew right now listening to look at all 7 times that it's used in your Bible. It's only used 7 times. It's not that many. You can look at it. All 7 times it is used of a woman that was a virgin, and you cannot prove that she was not. Yes, even the Proverbs one.
So let's look at the Proverbs one, and then I'm going to show you exactly why. The Proverbs one is just to humor you, because I saw your I know you had like let's look up Proverbs.
Yeah, let's look it up. Whatever, it doesn't matter.
Whichever it is. Yeah, if you want to pull it up.
You got it. Go ahead.
So Proverbs 30 verse 19. Right, yeah. Or well, I think it's 18. I think it's 18,
yeah. 19, in like Chabad, I think it's 18.
Let me see it. Let's see. What's the version? I can't see it very well. What's the version that he has?
There are 3 things that are concealed from me, and 4.
Okay, I like this translation. It says, there are 3 things that are too amazing for me. That's important, okay? Mm-hmm. You're familiar with the Hebrew, right?
Yeah,
do you know what the word is for amazing there?
Let's see. No, Nefal. Let me see.
Yeah, I think you got it. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't see it. I've got it pulled up on a slideshow, so I can't zoom in on a slideshow. So I don't.
No, you got it. Yeah. Okay. So it's a form of pala, right? That's the Hebrew word pala, which means wondrous. It has a very positive connotation. Are you familiar with the phrase "Pele yoetz aviad sar shalom"? If not, you should be, because that means Pele yoetz aviad sar shalom.
Not really. I don't think so.
That means wonderful counselor.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
But I don't know what you're getting at.
Wonderful. That's the Pele word. So you would agree with me that when it says too amazing for me, that's a positive connotation, right? I mean, it's used. It's absolutely positive. So it says 3 things that are too wonderful for me, wondrous for me, yea, 4 that I do not understand. So the first 3 things that are mentioned below fall into the category of being both amazing, wondrous, and not being able to be understood. However, the 4th thing mentioned doesn't fall in that wondrous category, but it does fall into the category of not being able to be understood. Would you agree with me on that?
I'm not sure. I mean, what translation are you reading? Because I'm not sure why you would. The NIV?
Because it's this
You're
is simple
reading
math.
NIV.
This is simple math. It says 3 things are too amazing for me.
Simple math.
Right? It's the first 3 fall into the category of being both simultaneously amazing and not being able to understood. But the 4th thing mentioned, right, the way with a man with an Alma, right, that is not amazing. So that has a
I don't know about that.
connotation.
Have you?
What?
What is not amazing about?
Well, I'm looking at the text. It says 3 are wondrous.
Let's just read it. Read it all the way through so that everyone can hear.
I'm just reading the way it says. You see where it says 3 are too amazing for me and 4 that I don't understand. You understand my logic in saying the first 3 fall under those 2 categories of being too amazing and not being able to be understood. But the 4th thing only falls into the category of not being able to be understood.
No, I mean, because then you would have to take that same, because there's a vav there, you would have to take that same, okay, if I concede to this, then I'm going to use this against you in a later chapter. Do you want me to do that?
Look, I don't need to use this to make my argument. My argument has already been made. Isaiah, Isaiah already says that the Alma refers to his wife.
No, he doesn't.
The writings on the door. You said that Isaiah was talking about things to come.
Yes.
You just quoted Isaiah. He didn't say, I'm looking for things to come in these signs. He says, these are signs in Israel. My sons are signs. He doesn't say this is exclusive to things to come. He says, these are signs. So it's your word against Isaiah's. I'm just doing this to humor you.
Okay, well then let's humor me then. So there are
right. So the adulterous Alma in that verse.
No. You even admitted in our previous conversation that this Alma was not adulterous. Come on, let's read it all the way through.
I didn't admit anything. I said, if you want to be humored, this is how it's going to be. It falls into the category of only not being able to be understood. So then it says, such is the way of an adulteress. She eats, wipes her mouth, and says, I have done no wrong. So that would refer to an adulterous Alma if you want to look at that. But that's not the end of my argument, because I'm going to show you once and for all.
So
what?
Can I address? You asked me a question, and I'm now the burden of proof is on me. So allow me to prove it.
For it.
Okay, so and I'm going to repeat this. He doesn't want to talk about it. I think he knows why. There is never a point in the Hebrew Bible where Alma is used, and it is used of someone who was not a virgin or had previously had kids, which rules out Isaiah's wife. Now,
I just gave you 2 examples.
No, we're going to discuss that. You can't. First of all, you can't use the passage in question to validate it. So there's that. The second.
That's why I used Proverbs, because you wanted me to use Proverbs, so I did.
Can I finish? Okay. Yeah. There are 3 things that are concealed from me, and 4 that I do not know. Now listen, guys. Everybody, count with me. The way of an eagle in the heavens. 1. The way of a serpent on the rock. 2. The way of a ship in the heart of the sea. 3. And the way of the way of a man with a young woman or virgin. 4. Then verse 20 goes on to speak about a completely separate issue. So this is the way of an adulterous woman. She eats, she wipes her mouth, and she says, I have committed no sin. The Alma is in verse 19. The Alma is not in verse 20. Those are separate issues. And so, again, there is no point where it can be proven without a shadow of a doubt, It would never hold up in court that the Alma here is anything other than a young woman of marriageable age who was assumed to be a virgin. Never once. In fact, if you look at the first 2 times that Alma is used in the Bible, it's used of well-known virgins, in which Judaism agrees that they are virgins. Now, the burden of proof would then fall on your side to say, well, in this one, we believe in all these times, we believe that she was a virgin, except for Isaiah 7. That would be unequal weights and measures. So therefore, unless you're going to say, which some have said, unless you're going to say that Isaiah had 2 wives, that he had a child with one, and then he had Sha'ar Yeshuv with a different wife, so that the Alma of Isaiah 7 could be his wife in Isaiah 8, and therefore be the virgin, which I think is eisegesis and reading into the text, because it doesn't say that. So why then does in Isaiah 8 does it say that he made love to her? What's the point? What's the same point that Hosea is trying to make? That God says, have these children because then I want you to name them something that's going to be symbolic of things to come in the future. Now, Yehuda says, I need you to prove to me that this is symbolic of things to come in the future. So I'm going to do that.
I don't have an issue. Courtney, I want to clarify. I don't have an issue with it being about things to come in the future. I have an issue with you saying that it doesn't have any relevance to Isaiah's time. That's the issue that I have.
No. What
you're trying to do is you're trying to whitewash the idea, because this is the only way for you to have any sort of argument. You have to default to the dual prophecy if you concede to my point, which is why you're not doing it. You have to have Alma be only about, and by the way, I'm going to prove to you that Betula is the better word to use for virginity. Okay, I wanted to.
Regardless, that's not what he used. Don't act like a.
Well, I know. I'm going to prove it to you. Watch this.
That's fine. If you want to prove that God could have, would have done something different, then that's something you need to take up with God. But the word Alma.
No. I'm going to prove to you contextually. Context is king here, right? Context is king.
But listen.
Wait, no, let's look at this. Deuteronomy, and I tried to share my screen with this. Can anybody pull up, and I want to get the Hebrew with it. Can you guys see it? Is it showing? Is my Deuteronomy 20? Is Deuteronomy 22 showing in Hebrew? Yes, I want to get it in Hebrew. I want to show the Hebrew here. Find something with the Hebrew on it, because I couldn't get it to show. Chabad.org something. Because this needs to be shown. 22 Chabad, CH Hebrew, whatever. Yeah. All right. So check this out. We're going to move down where it starts talking about.
So now, I just want to clarify so I understand for my viewers. Are we now trying to say that God should have used a different word? Is that what
I'm saying? That the word virgin is more specific. The word, let's watch this. So you can see the Hebrew here. It says, it shall be for a, wait, hold on. Is this Deuteronomy 22? No, this is Isaiah 8. Why is Isaiah 8 showing?
Oh, wait. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we want to get Deuteronomy 22 in here. So, okay.
So here's what your point.
Can you guys see Deuteronomy 22? Okay, here's my point. It says, if a man takes a wife, is intimate with her, and despises her, and he makes libelous charges against her, and gives her a bad name, saying, I took this woman, and I came to her, and I did not find any evidence of her virginity for her. What does this word say? See where my cursor is here? Can you read this word for me? Courtney? Betulim.
Yeah.
No, are we in agreement that this is talking about a woman's virginity? This isn't Proverbs 30 where we're talking about some poetic, things that don't leave a trace or anything like that. We're talking about the legal status of a woman based off of her virginity in a marriage, correct? So there's no question we're talking about virginity. And then again,
can I please respond? Can I respond? You asked me a question.
Well, I want to hone this in first.
Okay,
nowhere in this passage. What? Well, I just want to make it clear to you. Are we in agreement that nowhere in this passage is the word Alma seen at all?
Oh, no. See, now you're building a straw man.
I'm building a case for the specificity of the word betula having better specificity for Alma than the ambiguous cases that you're trying to bring up with the seven. I already showed you that Alma was adulterous, and you said, "Oh no, I'm going to manipulate the numbers and say it's not really what it is," right?
No, I'm telling. Okay, I know there can be 80-year-old betulas as well. 80-year-old.
Wonderful. Why wouldn't it use the word Alma here if Alma was such a better word to use for the legal status of a virgin?
As I told you,
nowhere to be seen there. Context is king. Context is king.
As I told you yesterday, I will not argue that God should have put the word betula, as some Christians may. God put the word through his scribes, Alma, until, as I told you, until you find me a passage or I come across a passage that is authoritative, that predates either the Masoretic text or Dead Sea Scrolls or something that otherwise says so, which I don't believe so, because in fact, Alma is very prophetic. Then I'm sticking with what God wrote. He put down Alma for a reason.
And I'm sticking with what Isaiah says when he says, my sons are signs, and I was intimate with the prophetess. And if you compare Isaiah 7:16 with Isaiah 8:4, it is very clear that the sign was specific to the time of King Ahaz at the very least. You want to say it's a future prophecy? Great. But do not deny Isaiah's words, which you are doing by saying it has no relevance to the birth of his own child.
No.
That is my position. And that is the end of the debate.
You keep interrupting me. I'm trying to tell you what I'm saying. You're saying I'm saying things I'm not. What I'm saying.
Do you agree that Isaiah's son is a fulfillment of Isaiah 7:14?
Hold on. Just let her respond. Just let her respond.
Go for it.
Okay, so I understand what you're asking me. You're asking me, why is it that Isaiah 8 says that Isaiah made love to his wife and she conceived and bore a son, of which, by the way, no one ever called Immanuel. So just in case anybody planned to use that against Yeshua, Yeshua was never called Immanuel. Well, neither was Hezekiah, neither was anyone, neither was Isaiah's son.
I didn't make that argument.
I know you didn't, but some people do. That's why I said if anybody makes that case.
That's a stalemate. I agree. That's a stalemate.
Agreed. It's very, very much so. So with that being said, it's because in verse 18, which you have rightly pointed out, that they are symbols to Israel. So with that being said, where you and I disagree is on the fact that they are signs and symbols of things to come. I can prove this if you'll give me the opportunity. Do you want me to prove this to you?
I believe Isaiah. He doesn't like how do you what I want to do, and I wish I could get my Word document to show, because I have these verses side by side, right?
Brother, I understand. Yes, the
Isaiah 7:16,
Isaiah 7 and 8.
Isaiah 7, do you think those are two different instances when he says the kings you dread will be abandoned versus the wealth of Damascus and it will be carried off before the king of Assyria? Do you think that's all future? Do you think that's referring to something that didn't happen in Isaiah's time? Because I beg to differ. We both know what happened to the two northern kingdoms in the time of Hezekiah. They were destroyed by King Sennacherib. So to say it has no relevance to that era is to deny the words of Isaiah. That's my premise.
No. You're not hearing me. I really, truly don't think you're understanding what I'm saying. If you'll please give me an opportunity to explain it, I can hopefully get you to understand what I'm saying. The relevance is in the fact that the messianic figure would be born 700 years later. Just bear with me here. 700 years later. So the land that he was concerned about wasn't even going to be a people in the time that Yeshua would have been born to then seat someone else over them and thus thwart the promise of God. See, the difference in you and me is I'm looking at the overall picture, because Isaiah can't add to nor take away from the Torah. He's not allowed to do that, or else he'd be a false prophet. So what is Isaiah saying? Isaiah is expounding on what was already known in the Torah. Why do you think I started my opening statement with proving that the scepter is through Judah? If not to prove to you that Isaiah 7, 8, And 9, and even further in, but Isaiah 7, 8, 9 is what we're talking about, is Messianic prophecies. And the
I
reason
didn't deny that.
Okay,
I don't know why that's
just give her, just let her finish up.
And so why is this child, okay, eating curds and honey and things like that? Why is this language like this? Well, for one, if you believe that it's Isaiah's son that this Alma has, right? Is that
yes?
Right? Okay.
Isaiah says it.
Why is it? Okay, so now I'm going to use Isaiah 7's words against you. Isaiah 7 tells us that he gives us 65 years. So let me ask you, how old is a child before they know? Are they 65 years old before they know to reject evil and choose the good?
I wouldn't say so.
What?
I wouldn't say so.
Okay, so because by the way, this was fulfilled in Hezekiah's time, long after Ahaz. So how old?
Not too long after Ahaz.
How old would Isaiah's son have been for this prophecy of eating, curds and honey, and knowing to reject evil and choose good, and knowing when to say mommy and daddy? When would that have been? How old would he have been? Because Isaiah says 65 years. And I surely know that you don't think a man is 65 years old before he can eat certain things and say mommy and daddy and know what's right and wrong.
Well, there's two parts to the prophecy, right? There's one part that the son is born. There's no real understanding that the son is supposed to be the fulfillment of Hezekiah. Like, for example, in Hezekiah's time, you have a prophecy being applied in Isaiah 9, right? Where you have that's a prophecy, for example, about King Hezekiah, which has a different connotation to it. Here you have a prophecy simply about a comforting sign of the birth of a boy. It doesn't necessarily say that, physically certain things are going to inevitably happen, precisely. It's a little bit more in the time that the son is born, during that generation that Isaiah lives, there's going to be some thwarting of these kingdoms. And it happened to be through the king of Assyria, right?
Okay, so Isaiah tells us that according to your interpretation, that it's his son that is symbol or signs of these things. And now you're telling me that he's not?
No, of course he is. I'm saying that it has to be during Isaiah's generation. However many years you want to put on it, there has to be some fulfillment of it within the time of Isaiah's generation, because he says, my sons are signs. So there has to be. I don't know the precise date, if that's what you're trying to ask me. You're saying, 65 years. Let me show the exact date of when this happens. I'm saying within his generation, we're supposed to find fulfillment within this. And we for sure have it when Sennacherib comes and destroys the kingdoms of, the two northern kingdoms that he was afraid of. So if you want me to pin down the, the son is mentioned as a
sign, is it not important, if God's words never come back void and they're true, right, that therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. The Alma will conceive and give birth to a son, and will call his name Immanuel. This person is still the one that we're talking about. He will be eating curds and honey before he knows enough to reject the wrong and choose the good. Before the boy knows enough to reject the wrong and choose the right, the land of the two kings that you dread will be laid waste.
So here's the question. When was the child born? Isaiah doesn't give us the exact time date of when.
Yes, 65 years.
What?
Yes.
He says that he had this child at this exact date, and this was when I might give a 65, you're making an assumption that you know precisely when the child was born. So
in the
if
next
we want to be consistent with scripture, so your interpretation is, well, that says 65 years. So I'm just going to say that this prophecy is inconsistent with the years, so it can't be Isaiah. That's literally your argument. Whereas a better way to look at it is Isaiah says his sons are signs. So let's make this fit with actually what it would be, rather than let's say, no, Isaiah must be wrong when he says his sons are signs, because Isaiah's
I
a
didn't
liar,
say
and it
Isaiah
really
was
means
wrong.
Jesus. And it really means Jesus. And by the way, it wouldn't fit Jesus any better if you use that type of argument, because Jesus doesn't fit the timeline either. So
You're missing the timeline. Brother, I'm trying to get you to understand that 7, 8, and 9 are messianic.
I have no issue, Courtney, get this through your head. I do not have an issue with you saying it's messianic. I have an issue with you saying that it is exclusive to the Messiah. We agree that Isaiah 3:5 is exclusive to the Messiah because it says David, their king at the end of days. This prophecy says before the child knows this, these kings will be destroyed. That is very different from the Davidic king at the end of days. This is why I listen to Isaiah over you looking at some prophecy that has specific time fulfillment explicitly by the prophet saying this will happen by this time.
But what
you see the difference? You see the difference between the two?
No,
you understand?
No, I don't. I see that you're getting.
Why do you think we agree with Hosea chapter 3, verse 5 as being exclusive to the Messiah, but for some reason we can't come to an agreement on this?
Because for some reason, and I don't mean this out of disrespect, but for some reason, Jews think that they have a monopoly on being able to tell us what passages are messianic and what are not. And
so what defines a messianic prophecy? You need to define what that is.
Exactly. And I did so using the Torah. Listen, is the Torah not the foundation for us both? Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. So if it cannot be found in the Torah, I would ask you now, and everyone here, every Jew and Christian listening, if you cannot find the Messiah in Torah only, there's a problem. So that means what? That means Jeremiah, Hosea, Obadiah, Zechariah, all of these, Isaiah, and all these, are they just false prophets? Because they talk about the Messiah, the Samach, the branch.
Courtney, I don't have an issue. I don't have an issue with finding the Messiah in the Torah. I have an issue with you saying that Jesus is has exclusive rights to these prophecies because he didn't fulfill any of the ones that you mentioned.
I did actually. I started my intro mentioning the ones that exclusively identify Yeshua and no one else. Now, let me go.
Well, I didn't hear any. Please name one.
What do you mean? Why didn't you hear them? My opening.
You were making the assumption that the scepter referred to Jesus when Jesus he didn't even rule as a king. He didn't even rule as a king. And you're telling me that he's the fulfillment of Isaiah 49:10. This is speculation.
Yes, no, it's not. Because
yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Hezekiah, for example, we can look at Isaiah 9:5, right? You claim that this is a completely future prophecy that has nothing to, the wonderful counselor, Prince of Peace, right? All that. You believe that's about Jesus, and you say that's completely future, correct?
Yes, it's
right. Okay, now let me prove to you otherwise. In Isaiah chapter 9, it says, and I want to share this screen so that we can really delve into this so that I can prove without a shadow of a doubt that this is not a exclusively future prophecy. Okay, so let's share this. So is this showing? Is this going through?
Yeah, it's going through.
So there it says, a child has been born to us, a son given to us, and the authority upon his shoulder, the wondrous advisor, mighty God, and everlasting Father calls his name Prince of Peace. To him increases the authority and for peace without end on David's throne and on his kingdom to establish it and support it. So far, you think this is all Jesus, right?
Yes, it's
with justice and with righteousness. With righteousness, what's the next word say? With righteousness, and then what, Courtney?
I don't know where you're at.
Verse 6, when it says to establish it and to support it with justice, with righteousness, then what's the next word say?
From now to eternity.
From now into eternity, not hundreds of years in the future, from now into eternity. The zeal of the Lord of hosts shall accomplish this. This is why Jews identified this with Hezekiah. It is scripturally sound. It applies to Hezekiah in his generation. He is described as one of the most righteous kings, if not the most righteous king to ever rule over Judah. He destroyed Sennacherib's army, by the way. He was the one who said the prayer that destroyed the king of Assyria. The promise came to fulfillment. And to say that the open miracles that happened in Hezekiah's time did not warrant him being the fulfillment of this prophecy, especially when it says from now into eternity. destroys any possibility that you could say that Jesus, who never ruled as a king at all on the throne, would be a better candidate for this. It has to be Hezekiah.
I've already told you why in my opening statement, and I hope that people can pause this because I did give a lot of scriptures. Hopefully that these people will go back and they will actually study this because, you know, I see you bouncing around a lot. Like I see you kind of interrupting me. I think you know what I'm getting at and you don't really want me to expound on it because it's clear. I used your argument. You said Isaiah 7 is who the child is. Then why did Isaiah give us 65 years? So now you are going against Isaiah's words. I tell you that Alma does not mean that the person was not a virgin. You ignore that. You don't even really want to talk about anything which would otherwise, hopefully, God goes, I pray that they study enough to know that this is messianic. And the reason why
I don't disagree with it being messianic. Please stop misrepresenting me.
Okay, so in Christian world, when we say messianic, we mean about Jesus. Let me say that. I will do my best.
Okay, well, thank you for clearing that up. Because
I will do my best. A promise to you is to try and say, what would you prefer me say of David? What do you want me to say?
Say that it exclusively refers to Jesus because that's what you believe messianic means. That's not,
okay.
Look, when I say messianic, what I mean is that it has potentially a future context that we really don't know exactly what it's going to be, but maybe in the future it has some, you can do that with any scripture. You can literally do that with any scripture. So that's why.
No, see, this is where
possibility.
This is where I disagree that you can't do it with any scripture, that God has laid the foundation in the Torah for us to judge whether or not this figure, whom I say is messianic and of David, however you want to say it, about Yeshua, that he has given us little hints that you have to pick up on. And Yehuda, you're not picking up on them. And I've laid out I've not used any of the New Testament at this point, other than to say, look at this person that we have on trial, Yeshua. He fits the bill. Let's go back and look. I've not pulled out any New Testament scriptures yet. I am only using your own Bible. So if you go back in the Torah and you look at every single time the scepter is mentioned, and then follow that into the writings and the prophets, you get a very clear picture that this figure is the scepter. He is the branch. He is the right arm of the Lord, as Psalm 60 says. These are messianic things that the Bible is trying to get you to understand, which hopefully you start to notice the patterns, and then you carry that into the later chapters, such as Isaiah 53, when it clearly says, who has believed our report? To whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? Yehuda,
and you're getting on me for jumping around passages. Look, you said Isaiah 7, 8, and 9. You said Isaiah 7, 8, and 9 was the foundation of your argument. I stuck with that. If you want to talk about Psalms 110 and Hebrews 7 and Isaiah 53, that's wonderful. But I was simply going off of what you claimed you wanted to work on, and I demonstrated that it has fulfillment in. I mean, does from now mean to you hundreds of years in the future? I mean,
no,
you're going to dismiss Isaiah's immediacy and say it means things to come when it doesn't. You're going to ignore from now into eternity and say it only refers to Jesus. Like literally, you are butchering Isaiah. It's like, how do you read this with a straight face and say, well, this doesn't have anything to do with Isaiah's time. It only has to do with Jesus. Like that is because you read the New Testament, which takes these verses out of context and paints a picture that if you read the Tanakh on your own, no reasonable Jew would ever fall for this if they understood the original context that Isaiah was writing in, including Isaiah 53, which, hey, I would love to go into.
I completely disagree. If I were to take a Jew and I were to put him on an island and wipe out his memory, that means anything halakha, anything agadah, any of that, wipe it completely out and tell him to read the passages as they are, just the Bible. I can guarantee you by the time he got to Isaiah 7, he would say something's up with this figure. This figure is important. And then as you read into the latter chapters of Isaiah, it becomes very developed. This is why I think I'm not skipping around. I'm giving you my full answer. I said in the beginning I would do that. I would tell you what the passage is.
I don't have an issue with that, Courtney. I honestly don't. You can skip around all you want. I just felt I was just holding you to the same standard where you said you're skipping around or whatever. When you said that you were building your case through what I'm seeing is a consistent pattern of you ignoring Isaiah's word of the immediacy of the prophecy and saying, well, everything Isaiah is talking about is only about the Messiah, even though there's I mean, why would he be talking about, he had no relevancy in the time of King Ahaz or King Hezekiah? What wouldn't Isaiah have something to say about literally one of the greatest kings to ever rule over Judah coming up in the next generation? Why would he just completely ignore that? When King Ahaz was such an awful king, why would he just be like, I'm going to talk about only the Messiah now, but I'm not going to say anything about this wonderful king who's described in some of the most lofty terms of any king of Judah ever in the Bible, and just gloss over that? Like, yeah, this guy's going to destroy the king of Assyria that all you guys are worried about, but forget about him. The Messiah is really the only thing we need to be worrying about right now. Like, that's what you expect your audience to be able to believe. And that's not doing Isaiah justice, and that's not fair to God's original intent of what these prophecies were to be. You want it to be about future messianic fulfillment? Fine. But do not do the disservice to God and Isaiah of saying these have no relevance in Isaiah's time.
Okay, so I have not said what you claim that I say. In fact, Hezekiah, did he not show them around like, hey, look at the house of God, look at this, look at that? And then next thing you know, Assyria comes. And then here you like he's like
Babylon came. He defeated Assyria.
Yehuda. Go ahead, Courtney.
So anyways, he's like, look at the house of the Lord, look at all of the riches, look at this, look at that. And the next thing you know, Assyria is knocking at their door, and he's like, oh, what can I do to get you guys to go away? What riches can I give you? And he asks for the riches. And then Assyria even says, do you honestly think that you're going to escape out of my hands? Your own God sent me to conquer you. Now we know, again, because God is faithful, not faithful to you because you are you. No, he's faithful to whom? Himself and David. He clearly tells us in 2 Kings 8 and 20 that for the sake of David. Why David? Why mention this? What is the point in mentioning for the sake of David? What is the point? David's not here. You're talking about why does Isaiah not mention you think he's just going to gloss over and not mention the greatest king of Israel? Wait a minute. David is mentioned, not Hezekiah. David, for the sake of David.
Of course, because that's the whole reason why the kingdom, but to minimize Hezekiah's bringing back Israel to Torah, it hadn't been unified. Israel had not been unified on such a level since the times of King Solomon. Right. And it says, by the way, you want to talk about King David. What is Hezekiah compared to? Right. What is he compared to? I'm going to show you exactly what it says about Hezekiah and how his relevance is to David. Right. So if we go to find it real quick here, when it describes Hezekiah in 2 Kings 18, verse 5. It says, he trusted in the God of Israel. There was none like him among all the kings of Judah who were after him, nor were there before him. 2 Kings 18:6. He cleaved to the Lord. He did not turn away from following him. He kept his commandments, which he had commanded Moses. Now the Lord was with him in everything he ventured. He succeeded, and he rebelled against the king of Assyria and did not serve him. So here you have comparisons here. And I think I didn't get there's another verse I think that actually compares him to David himself, like just as his father David did, right? So, and I need to find that if I look up the full verse of that. But the point is here is that why would you gloss over this and you say this has no relevance to King Hezekiah when we look at Isaiah 9, 5 through 6, right? Or 6 through 7 in Christian Bibles. Yet it says from now into eternity, right? Which
I've already
clearly states that there is a, I don't know how in the world you can deal with that with a straight face and tell me.
I already explained it.
What now means hundreds of years in the future?
No,
Like
no, that's not what I said. Are you paying attention? I said that since Isaiah 9 projects you into the future, meaning the time where it says the Galilee, mentioned it. You notice I went through that in my opening statement, that is the point in time that Yeshua was walking this earth from now until eternity. So Isaiah 7 talks about his birth, and Isaiah
I don't even know what you're saying at this point. Like you're ascribing things to Jesus that the prophecy isn't even talking about. It's talking about a king of Judah who was established. Did Jesus ever rule as a king on the throne?
He sits at the right hand of God.
Okay, so a future prophecy that you think he's going to fulfill in the future. Wonderful.
No.
Coming, wonderful. No. This is every single thing you're saying. None of this actually happened. You're ascribing things to him that didn't happen. He's not sitting at the right hand of God.
According to you. Listen, you're not hearing what I'm saying.
To say that he is today. Just the New Testament says he is.
You're
you want to look at Psalms 110 and let me tell you all the things that Jesus didn't fulfill in it? We can go there.
I want to finish this one before we move on to the next one. But yes, this is fine. We can segue into the next one. What I'm trying to get you to understand is that it has nothing to do with Isaiah's son, other than the fact that his son's name would be Mahar Shalah Hashbahaz. And then his other son's name means remnant return, which ultimately points you to the messianic figure Jesus in the future. Let me finish and explain. The point is that it's trying to explain to you, like in Isaiah 8, when it says, bind up this prophecy and wait for Hashem, who is hiding his face from Jacob's descendants. And then it says, I will put my trust in him. This entire passage is messianic. It is clearly trying to dictate to you that there is a messianic figure that will come and break the chains that burden you down, the sin chains. And that is
how did Jesus accomplish this? Sin still exists in the world. So why are you telling me that Jesus is the exclusive? He didn't fulfill any of these, is what I'm saying. Is you're saying, oh, the New Testament says he walked in the Galilee, like everyone did. Like,
no.
What are you even trying to
because you're ignoring. Listen, this is
none of these are exclusive to the Messiah.
Listen,
this is what you're not understanding. There's prophecies like Hosea 3:5, which we both agree on, that are exclusive to the Messiah. Very obvious. David, their king, future prophecy, no question there. This says these things needed to happen in their time, and you are making up your own interpretation of things needing to be solely in the future. Right?
I'm not making up my own interpretation. I am allowing the Bible to define itself. These words.
Then you would listen to Isaiah when he says these signs and not make up something and say it's things to come. You are literally taking Isaiah out of context and making up your own situation. I'm not going to let you get away with that.
You're not hearing me. You're listening to respond rather than actually understand what I'm trying to say. If you ever truly want to understand the New Testament, whether you can test whether it's legit or not, then you need to actually listen to what another.
You have to prove. Look, I don't mind you saying that I agree. Here's the thing. You think that I disagree with you, or you, even no matter how many times I tell you that I don't mind this having a future messianic context, you keep saying, "Oh, you don't think it's messianic," and I said, "You can do whatever you want. Make it messianic if you want." My issue is you need to prove to me that this has nothing to do with Isaiah's son, and you have not even attempted to do that. All you've done is say, we need to say that this is messianic. And I don't disagree with that. You need to demonstrate that Isaiah is lying, or you need to demonstrate that, I mean, you see how ridiculous it sounds when you put it on paper? Why is he saying that his sons are signs? Why is he saying this is literally Isaiah's words? It's a straw man for me to mention the fact that Isaiah had a son in the very next chapter that he said a woman was going to have a son with.
No, it's a straw man.
Why would he? That's a straw man for me to bring up Isaiah's own words in the very next chapter.
I brought up Yeshayahu's words. You ignore those. What I'm trying to get you to understand that you don't want to understand, and that's fine. Listen,
this is the only way you can win this debate.
This debate is never about convincing the one I'm debating. This debate is for those who will listen now and 100 years from now. I'm trying to get you and anyone else to look into the passages that I am referencing. Did you know that Isaiah 8 references Psalm 118, verse 22? If you did not know that, then you don't know Isaiah 8 well enough. He mentions the stone. He says he is a stone to Israel and to Judah.
Jesus is the stone?
Can I finish? He mentions the stone for a specific reason, because Psalm 118 is a messianic passage. Now, if you want to go there, we can read it, but I'm trying to drop these little nuggets for, again, not only you, but for others who will listen to this debate later and stop and pause it and go, let me look up the stone. Oh, wow, that is messianic. Wow, look at this. How is it that the stone is also the mercy of the Lord? The stone is also the right hand of the Lord. Oh, and look, Isaiah 53 says the right arm or hand of the Lord is, you know, that's what I'm trying to build up here that you are ignoring, which takes us into the next chapter, which tells us, like you said, they are a sign of things to come. Now,
it doesn't say of things to come, Courtney. Stop saying that.
But no, I'm not going to stop
for you the verse.
You don't even know the Hebrew word that's
I'm not
used.
going to bastardize my Tanakh and tell me that it says it's a sign of things to come when it doesn't say that.
Do you want me to
read the verse? Read the verse out loud to me, Courtney. Like, goodness, read Isaiah 18. Read it. Put it up. Put Isaiah 8:18. Show me where it says it's a sign of things to come.
Would you
show me?
Like Yehuda?
Read the verse. Read the verse. Straight stam. Read the verse.
Would you like me to explain myself rather than keep interrupting me?
I'd like you to read the verse.
I'm trying. I will read the verse, but I need to finish my statement first. You keep saying that I'm bastardizing your scriptures, brother.
You're saying it's a thing of things to come. It doesn't say that in the verse.
Maybe this should have been a structured debate because you keep interrupting me. So I guess I've learned my lesson. I won't do these types of debates anymore. I will do structured debates. You promised me that this wouldn't happen. Now, as I continue, the reason why it's symbolic of things to come, because if you look at the Hebrew word used there in Isaiah 8, let's pull it up. So it should be, for anyone that doesn't know Hebrew, you can find it in like a blue letter Bible or something like that. So that, you know, like I said, for people that don't know Hebrew, Isaiah 8 verse 18, the word for wonders there, or, you know, like, or symbols or whatever, it's Hebrew word 4159. And if you look that word up, it takes you to a very messianic passage. Now, let me just state this, both Judaism and Christianity agree that all 5 mentions of the branch is about the Messiah, son of David. Do you disagree?
That all 3 times it says the branch?
No, 5. There's 5 of them.
Okay, which like, okay, the word semach, is that what you're talking about?
Yes, semach, the branch. Isaiah.
I mean, you'll have to show me the specific ones that you're talking about. I know that the one about Zerubbabel is about Zerubbabel and the future Messiah. So I wouldn't say that it's exclusive to the Messiah. And this is the constant thing that we have over and over again, is you think that this is exclusive. It's not exclusive.
Well, let it be known that unless you have an outlier opinion within Judaism, that all 5 mentions of the branch in the Tanakh, found in Jeremiah and Zechariah and
I'm telling you, Zechariah is not exclusive to the Messiah. That's what I'm saying. It's not exclusive to the Messiah. It refers to Zerubbabel in the immediate context.
Judaism would disagree with you.
I could show you in the book of Zechariah. I can prove this to you.
So
here's how I can prove it to you.
Yehuda, hold on. Go ahead, Courtney. Go ahead.
So anyways, all 5 mentions of the branch are universally understood by Christianity and Judaism to be about.
No, that is a lie. That is false. That is absolutely false. I'm not going to let you. It is false. Don't tell me what my religion believes. That's not what it is. I know what the Tanakh says, and if you want to go into an actual contextual argument about this, I can show you where Zerubbabel is described as the one who built the temple, that Tzemach is described as the person who builds the temple. So in the immediate context, Judaism absolutely understands when it says that Tzemach, who will build the temple, that's Zerubbabel, and scripture and history confirms that.
Okay, well, anyways, so
I know. Anyways, you didn't realize that. Whoops.
no,
okay.
I realized.
Yes.
I know you want to admit you're wrong, but that's. I mean, I have contextual evidence for this. Let's do it.
Yehuda, you have. I sense that you're angry for some reason, and you knew.
I don't want you contextually saying things that are wrong and saying, "Oh."
Yehuda, you'll have a chance to respond. Come on. I'll give you time. I give everybody time. You know this.
So
go ahead, Courtney.
So I understand that what I say can possibly offend Jewish people. That is not my intent. Please understand and hear the sincerity. That is not my intent. I'm trying to get people to understand that we are not bastardizing your scriptures as you claim that we are. So how do I prove that Isaiah 8 is symbolic of things to come, that the children being named what they were was a symbol, as symbolic of things to come in the future? And that's why Isaiah went to his wife, conceived and bore a son. And that son has nothing to do with Isaiah 7:14. This is my point. So if you look at the Hebrew word, like I said, Hebrew word 4159, it is used in Zechariah chapter 3, verse 8, when it says, "Hear now, Joshua, you high priest, thou and that," oh, I can't pull it up on, hold on. That's King James. "You and thy fellows that sit before you, who are men," it says wondered at, but I don't know what your translation would say. "They are men wondered at, for behold, I
worthy of a miracle I got."
What now?
No, I said, yeah, you asked me what my translation, it says men worthy of a miracle.
So.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. It's same idea. Yeah.
Okay. That these men are symbolic of things to come. And then if you look, it says symbolic of things to come. "I'm going to bring my servant, the branch." Notice here, Judaism agrees that this branch figure is about the Messiah, son of David. Notice what verse 9 says in Zechariah 3. "See, the stone I have set in front of Joshua. There are 7 eyes on the one stone, and I will engrave an inscription on it, says the Lord Almighty." And then look at what he says. "I will remove the sin of the land in a single day." Now, back to Isaiah 8. Why does Isaiah 8 reference the stone? It is a messianic passage, as Psalm 119 and as Psalm 60 says, which correlates the stone with the branch, with the arm of the Lord and the scepter of the Lord. This is how you know whether something is messianic, not because a Jew today or a Jew in Rishonim time or a Jew of the sages say that something is messianic. Because we all agree on the passages of the reigning king. We do not agree on the passages of the suffering servant, which is not a passage that I think many people even know how to explain. And this is what I'm trying to do. You asked me to prove the burden that this was Yeshua exclusively, and this is what I've done.
Okay, so once again, you were not being, your information is inaccurate. I don't know what to say. This is not understood by the Tanakh, right? We're not talking about what rabbis have to say. I'm going to prove to you that this has fulfillment. This tzemach, this branch, is a fulfillment of Zerubbabel, at least in the immediate context. So this is the same theme we have over and over again. She says this is only about the Messiah, and I show you textual evidence to say that it had fulfillment in its time, and she ignores the fulfillment in its time. So this is the same pattern for everybody listening. She doesn't seem to have any ability to look at passages and see them in the context of their own time. So keep in mind, Zechariah was a prophet at the end of the first exile. The temple was destroyed, and then they went back to build the temple. So if you look in this chapter, there's a man mentioned, or actually, maybe it's in the next chapter. So first it's talking about the branch. It's introducing this character of the branch, right? Who is going to effectively, the stone, right? It's talking about a stone. Very significant. I agree. We're very concerned. What is the significance of this stone? Well, all we have to do is read the next chapter. I'm not sure if Courtney's ever done this before, but we're going to check out the next chapter and see. There's a fellow here named Zerubbabel, and I want to see if I can make this in the chat. Let's see if this is going to work. Let's see what shows up. Okay. Zechariah chapter 4. This is the very next chapter after this. So it says, verse 6. So it says, and he answered to me and spoke, saying, this is the word of the Lord to Zerubbabel, who, by the way, was a descendant of King David, saying, not by might and not by military force and not by physical strength, but by my spirit, says the Lord of hosts. Who are you, O great mountain? Before Zerubbabel, you sink to a plain. He will bring out the stone of the main architect with shouts of grace to it. So Courtney wants you to believe that this stone is about Jesus. It's exclusive to Jesus, while ignoring the very obvious context of what Zechariah is speaking about in his day, which is the rebuilding of the temple, the building of the second temple. And the Lord, word of the Lord came to me saying, Zerubbabel's hands founded this house, and his hand shall complete it. And you shall know that the Lord of hosts has sent me to you, saying, Zerubbabel will build the temple. And if you look in the book of Ezra and Nehemiah, you see, and Courtney, you would agree, Zerubbabel built the second temple. Do you agree?
Yeah, I have no issues with that.
Absolutely. So what? And he's described as he will bring out the stone. There's your stone. There's your stone. That's it. That's the end of it. You want to say now? You want to say it has future messianic context? Once again, be my guest. Do that all you want. But how dare you ignore the original context of what this was written in? That is the theme of this debate. It's not all exclusively about the Messiah. It has fulfillment in its day. And okay. I'm going to further demonstrate this. I'm going to further demonstrate that the branch is indeed Zerubbabel in this context, right? So the verse that you brought up, hearken now, O Joshua, the high priest, and your companions who sit before you. They are men worthy of a miracle. Behold, I bring my servant, interesting word choice, the shoot, right? So, or the branch, tzemach, that's how we understand it, right? So if we go to Haggai chapter 2, here's what it says about Zerubbabel. Now, keep in mind the servant part. It says, say to Zerubbabel, governor of Judah, saying, I am shaking up the heaven and earth, and I will overthrow the throne of kingdoms. I will destroy the power of the kingdoms and the nations, and I will overthrow the chariots and their riders, and their horses and their riders shall come down, each one by the sword of his brother. On that day, says the Lord of hosts, I will take you, Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, my servant. Oh, same description as the branch who builds the temple, says the Lord, and I will make you a signet, for I have chosen you, says the Lord of hosts. So scripturally, we have a sound foundation that he is the servant, he's God's servant who builds the temple, who brings the stone. So Courtney, you want this to have messianic future prophecy? That's fine, but please do not tell me, as you originally tried to say, that this is an exclusive prophecy that only describes the Messiah, son of David, who you would describe to be Jesus, because it does not.
Well, I would adamantly disagree with you. And this is because you're using, so you find that there are many people called a servant, but the Messiah himself is called a servant. And I can prove that. So
what about the stone?
The stone is Yeshua. I've already made that clear. And
so we're going to ignore Zerubbabel. Okay, fine. That's fine.
No, okay. Isaiah, what is Isaiah 28 about? Is that futuristic? Yes,
this is gold. Okay, I'm losing this argument, so let's go to Isaiah 28. I mean, this.
No, you're not. No, listen.
Three-ring circus.
Your ad
You wanted
hominem.
to bring up Zechariah, and now you're running away. Okay.
No, I'm not running away. You'll see once you get there that I am absolutely head on in this. So if you go to Isaiah 28,
Isaiah 28. Isaiah 28.
Is it or is it not?
Jesus is the
See, you don't
definitive.
want to answer. You don't want to answer because you know where I'm going.
Hold on. Go ahead, Courtney.
Is Isaiah 28 futuristic or not? Yes or no?
On that day, he will be as God of glory. These two erred in the tables, in whom precept, and he said to him, the Lord shall be precept, precept. I mean, for the most part, it seems like there's things that are going on. But look, I don't want to say every single verse didn't have any sort of,
Do you see, this is what I can never make my case because you'll never openly admit to anything. You say everything's messianic. So then nothing is messianic. Like, that's not fair.
Well, it's not fair. It's not fair when Christians like you say to Jews that, let's, look at this and say that it refers to the Messiah and ignore the original context. That's not fair. And saying that Jesus is the stone, Jesus is the lamb, and Jesus is the toast on my, like, come on, like, let's be honest here. He didn't fulfill any of these. And you're using this like it's some proof text.
Everything that I've mentioned thus far, he has fulfilled. So I will continue to go. You've now conceded that Isaiah 28 has futuristic application.
I didn't concede anything. Look, if you want to do a study on this.
What is Isaiah 28 to you? You said it does sound like it's futuristic. Did you not?
Look, I'm not going to commit to saying that this is entirely futuristic or that it has any sort of thing to that, honestly. I don't, honestly. It talks about the trampled the pride of the drunkards of Ephraim. It sounds like the destruction of the northern kingdom a little bit, which would have happened in the past. So I'm not going to say it's entirely futuristic.
This is why I didn't want to ask you. This is why you said, oh, you're running from it. I'm not running from it. There's a reason I'm asking what I'm asking in the form and the way that I'm doing it and in the order that I'm doing it. Isaiah 28 is futuristic. And if you get down, for people that want to know the point that I'm trying to get to, if you get down to verse 16, you will see it says, so this is what the sovereign Lord says. See, I lay a stone in Zion, a tested stone, a precious cornerstone for a sure foundation. And the one who relies on it will never be stricken with panic. And that is Yeshua HaMashiach.
Based off of what, Courtney? Because the New Testament
everything that I've been talking about for the last hour and 36 minutes.
Just because it says stone or lamb, every time it says the word stone, it refers to Jesus. Stone, stone, stone. Jesus was stoned. Like, come on. Like, this isn't an argument.
The argument is that Isaiah is called the stone. He's called the banner. He's called the arm of the Lord. He's the mercy of the Lord. All of these passages are messianic.
By the way, if you want to know Judaism's official position on this, it says, behold, I have laid a foundation. And it says, this is past tense. Esther 1:8.
Now you care about what Judaism says, whereas
you wanted to know. You said that Judaism says.
I said, what do you
said that Judaism says that Zerubbabel.
You guys,
or that Semach, that the branch. You said Judaism says this. If you wanted to know what Judaism says, and you made a statement that was false, and
no, it wasn't. It's not a false statement because you don't believe it. It's not a false
statement. I showed you that Zerubbabel is associated with the stone that you claim is exclusive to your Jesus.
You're getting clearly angry because just because you don't believe it's messianic, that's fine. But 99.
I didn't say it's not messianic. You can't. Are you unable to comprehend when I say, like, how does this not compute? I'm fine with all of this being messianic.
Do me a favor. Call in to Tovia Singer's show and ask him, are all 5 mentions of the branch, are they talking about?
I absolutely will. He will say exactly what I say because I've heard him say it before.
Really? Okay, I'll find you a video where he says opposite. So we'll kill that. We'll squash that.
Look, I know what Chazal say. I know what's more important? I know what Zechariah says. I know what Haggai says. The servant, it's not just about the servant, it's about the stone. Let's put it all together. The servant, the stone, and the fact that he built the temple.
But now you're telling me in Isaiah 28 that Judaism says this is past tense, when earlier you said you agreed it was future tense. Yeah, it does look like
I didn't agree. I said it looks like Ephraim is being I didn't agree. I gave it a closer look. I never agreed. I said it looks like a lot of it's future, and then I looked and it's talked about Ephraim being and then I looked at the specific verse that you said, and I wanted to know, since you were concerned with what Judaism says about it and you misrepresented it, I looked at what Judaism has to say. I'm sorry. It says it is. If you want to know what Judaism says on that, it says it's past. I'm sorry. If you want to know, that's it.
But it's not. I don't need to know what Judaism says about the Tzemach. Funny, unequal weight.
No, I'm not talking about the Tzemach. I'm talking about the stone verse that you brought up in Isaiah 28.
Any intelligent person can see the point I'm trying to make, Yehuda. Come on.
Well, you're misrepresenting Judaism on two fronts. You're trying to make me admit something that isn't true. Judaism doesn't see Isaiah 28 as future tense entirely. So
Isaiah passages, Tzemach passages are universally agreed upon by Judaism and Christianity to be about the Messiah, son of David. Judaism
that's fine, but that exclusively. Do you understand the difference, Courtney? This is the theme of the debate.
And
I'm fine with all of this having future, but
I have proven, I know what you're asking me, to exclusively prove that it's Jesus. And I have done so by proving that it's the stone, the banner, the scepter. All of these are the suffering servant aspects of the Messiah. He has a two-part duty: the Messiah, son of Joseph, and the Messiah, son of David. I keep trying to get you to understand that. This is what Christianity and Judaism don't agree upon. You say that's not true. I say I disagree with you. This is why we find passages where he comes lowly riding on a donkey, yet in Daniel 7, he's riding on the clouds and coming to the Ancient of Days. No other person could come to the Ancient of Days except for a divine one. So
what is this even like? You're not even, goodness sakes, you're making up all sorts of things, jumping all over the place. Why can't you admit that you made an argument? You claim that the stone, you made an argument that,
they're a little.
Courtney, you made an argument that the stone was exclusive to the Messiah, and you brought passages down and you said this only has to do with the Messiah. I showed you otherwise, and you do not have the humility to admit that your argument fell flat. Zerubbabel is associated with the stone. Not only that, he built
the stone with the 7 eyes on it.
Yes,
that's interesting. No, the stone with
absolutely.
the 7 eyes are the 7 spirits of the Lord, which is mentioned in Isaiah 11, which connects yet again another Tzemach passage to the Messiah. Yehuda, you don't.
Hey! By the way, have you read Zechariah chapter 4? Once again, it says in Zechariah. Okay. You didn't see verse 10. I'm going to show you where the 7 eyes are linked to Zerubbabel once again in verse 10, because apparently that wasn't enough for you. You got to see this too. So let's look at the next verse there in, sorry, I think that didn't.
Zechariah 4 is covered in the book of Revelation.
I mean, okay, well, you clearly haven't looked at it closely enough, because what is going on here is, so remember, we already saw this part where it says, Zerubbabel's hand founded this house, and his hand shall complete it. You shall know that the Lord of hosts has sent me to you. For whoever despised the day of small things shall rejoice to see the plummet in Zerubbabel's hands. These 7-fold, the eyes of the Lord are roving to and fro throughout the earth. So you are telling me that Zerubbabel has nothing to do with this. Yet I have a verse saying precisely the opposite. So
I already told you that Revelation covers the 2 olive trees, the witnesses. I'm
not even talking about the 2 olive trees, but
yes,
if you want to change the topic, if you want to change the topic to that, that's fine. You were talking about the stone. You were talking about the stone in Zechariah 3, verses 8 and 9, right? Hearken to, O Joshua, high priest, and your companions who sit before you, men who are worthy of a miracle. Behold, my servant, the shoot. Zerubbabel, behold the stone that I have placed before Joshua. 7 eyes are directed to one stone. You said, oh, this has nothing to do with Zerubbabel, right? Untie the knots. The Lord of the hosts will remove the iniquity in one day. And then the very next chapter, not only does it talk about Zerubbabel with a stone, it talks about him building the temple. You know, it says, you are a great mountain before Zerubbabel. You sing a plain. He will bring out the stone of the main architect with shouts of grace to it. And the Lord of the word came to me saying, Zerubbabel's hands founded this house. He built the temple, and his house shall complete it. And you will know that the Lord of hosts has sent me to you. For whoever despised the day of small things shall rejoice and see the plummet of Zerubbabel's hand, these 7-fold. Oh, did you forget about the 7 eyes on the previous verse, and you're going to tell me, no, ignore, pay no attention behind the curtain. Zerubbabel has nothing to do with this. It's all Jesus. Jesus is the stone. Jesus is the 7 golden eyes. It has nothing to do with Zerubbabel. Nothing.
Yes. Psalm 118.
How dare you? How dare you look at the face of my holy text and say this has nothing to do with what God says it's supposed to be?
That's
You're not going to get away with that.
But you are
No, it's the Bible's interpretation. It's a simple reading. You're saying let's ignore everything that gives any sort of fulfillment to anybody in their time, and then you're saying let's ignore this and say it's all Jesus because I'm going to make up my own standard for what Judaism believes.
Yeah, Yehuda, let her explain what she is saying.
I've not said that. I've tried to tell you over and over again that God hopes that by the time you get to these passages, it clearly dictates to you that there are messianic implications that you, the reader, should be able to pull out of there and understand what's going on. Because I think that's the portion that you are conveniently ignoring, right? You and I both agree on the reigning king aspect. To a certain degree, we agree on it. You ignore the passages that talk about the suffering servant. There is someone that suffers for the sins of Israel. Remember, he said,
I don't ignore them.
Okay, so you must attribute it to somebody else then. And either way, the point that I'm trying to get at is, again, I am the lawyer. Yeshua's on trial. I am speaking for him because the New Testament is claiming that he is the Messiah. And the only thing that I have to do is go back and look at the passages in the Old Testament and prove to you. But you conveniently ignore what the Torah says. You conveniently ignore the passages that ultimately lead up to Isaiah 7, which would proclaim that he would be born of a virgin. And you would say, well, then how is he Mashiach if he's born of a virgin? Is that something you would think? Maybe that's where
I don't even need to go there. Okay, Courtney, because I already demonstrate, I can do that if you want, but I don't need to because like I said, this debate was over when it started. I demonstrated that Isaiah's son is the fulfillment of this prophecy, and you tried to bastardize the prophecy by saying it was supposed to be only in the future. You ignore Isaiah's word. I don't have to do any of that.
You ignore Alma means a virgin every time.
I just showed you in Proverbs. I showed you Betula.
So
you literally ignored the legal context of virginity.
Remember to me that you sent me a private message. Now, please do not make me have to prove to everyone that you did not say this in the private conversation.
Say what? Yeah, I would love for you to say. Hold me accountable.
That you made the statement that Proverbs 30, you said, don't worry, I'm not even going to use that because that is a stalemate. And you said, and I proved to you that you said, well, no, I can prove to you if you're going to use any other passage that Betula is. And I said, I don't plan to tell you that Betula is a better word to use. Alma.
Look, the only reason I went into it was you said, even the one in Proverbs 30, you mentioned that. So I said, look, if you're going to call it out, then I'm going to demonstrate why it has. Look, here's the thing. I think that the end of the debate linguistically is what I showed you in Deuteronomy 22, because in Proverbs, you have a little bit of ambiguity, right? You said this would never stand up to a test in court, right? You're looking at it from that perspective. But what will stand up to a test in court, because that's literally what the text is about in Deuteronomy chapter 22, is that Betula is exclusively used in that passage and Alma is nowhere to be seen. So based on that alone, I can demonstrate that the word Betula is a superior specifier when it comes to specifying a woman's virginity.
But we are not arguing that. That is not, you are literally building a straw man, Yehuda. You are trying to say that I am saying that Alma is a better dictator of virginity. That is not what I'm saying. I am saying this. You cannot prove not one single time contextually or semantically that this Alma in any passage was not a virgin. And I dare you to prove it.
I did using Proverbs 30. And then you said, even if I accept that, I know why you didn't want me to bring it up in the debate. I don't think you were expecting what I had to say because it's not an argument that you're going to hear. Listen, Courtney, I'm not Tovia Singer. I'm sorry. I'm not Tovia Singer. These arguments that I'm bringing up.
Wait a minute. I never said I didn't want you to bring it up.
I'm saying, well, I had an argument that you hadn't seen before, and you really didn't know what to do with it.
Wait, what argument? What argument?
The first three things go under the category of being too wondrous, and the fourth thing is only under the category of being unknowable.
No, that's false. You're trying to say that the vav there dictates a gap in time.
I'm talking about the word pela. I'm talking about the word pela versus basically Yodea, understanding. So that's what I'm talking about, is that at the very least, you have an opening for that fourth thing to be described as something not necessarily wondrous. So that's why when you see the verse, the next thing, when it says, it's not the next thing, it's specifying such is the way of an adulterous woman. She eats, wipes her mouth, and says, I have done no wrong.
Which is
it's not the fourth, it's describing the fourth thing. It's a description of the fourth thing, because that's the unique thing. That's the one that's unique. So it's giving a description. What?
Solomon can't count?
If he couldn't count, then that would be a fifth thing. But Baruch Hashem, Solomon knows that last thing that he's describing is describing the fourth. So according to your interpretation, there's five things. According to my understanding, then why doesn't he say there's one thing that I find so wondrous under that text? Let's look at it again. Let's look at the
screen share. Here
I go. Hold on, Yehuda. Before we look, just let Courtney respond. Before we look at it, just let Courtney respond here. Go ahead. Go for it.
Okay, let me see if I can't get it pulled up here. Okay, can everyone see this?
Yeah.
Okay,
actually, I have to make it bigger. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, it may be small. So verse 18, this is where he starts. If you look at the chapter, he's counting all the way through the chapter. It's just kind of the theme of the chapter. There are three things that are concealed from me, four that I do not know. One, the way of an eagle in heavens. Two, the way of a serpent on a rock. Remember, he mentioned four things: the way of a ship in the heart of the sea, and the way of a man with an Alma, a virgin.
Right.
Because if you
not a virgin, but yes,
an Alma, because every time in prior to this, all 6 times, you cannot prove that she was not a virgin. So the burden of proof is on you to prove that this person was not a virgin.
So keep the screen up. It says, so is the way of an adulterous woman. She eats, wipes her mouth, and says, I have committed no sin. Then the next thing it says, under 3 things the earth quenches, and under 4 it cannot endure. So let's go back up to verse 18 where it says, there are 3 things that are concealed from me, under 4 that I do not know. And then it lists 4 things. And then you have verse 20, which is just hanging out alone. So you're saying Solomon
is hanging out alone by itself.
So what category does this fit into? Is it
its own thing? This happens numerous times in the Bible.
It's its own thing, and then he starts a new list later, so that verse 20 has nothing to do with any of the surrounding verses. It's just, I'm going to talk about an adulterous woman for no reason. It has nothing to do with the previous verse, even though it mentions a woman. It has no description here. That's what you expect us to do. And by the way, that would mean that he would not be able to count, because there would be a 5th thing that is unaccounted for. Your interpretation makes
my interpretation
not being able to count.
Is a standalone, and you can't prove, because in verse 19 is the 4 things listed. Then verse 20, it discusses something else. And then it continues on. This is done many times in poetic passages. Many times.
That's fine, Courtney. I'm just saying the evidence, like I said, this isn't the defining thing, but I think there's more evidence in my favor that it's referring to an adulterous woman, aside from, let's make a list of things and then make something that has nothing to do with the list and then make a new list. Why would he not include this 5th thing that's described as being counted? Like I said, your own argument goes against you by saying Solomon can't count, because according to your interpretation, this would be a 5th thing unaccounted for.
It's a standalone thing, and it's a
right. So that's that's the only way you can get away with this, is you can say, it's not describing the Alma, even though the previous verse says that it is, because I want it to only mean virgin, even when the evidence is staring me in the face. So look, we can either call this a stalemate. I can bring up Deuteronomy 22 and demonstrate that betula is a better word to use. Either way, you lose. My point is that Isaiah's word, we don't even have to do any of that. Isaiah's word is against yours. He says, my sons are signs, not things to come. He says, My
No, I've
sons are
already
signs.
proven the things to come. I've already proven that. But see, you
You haven't
don't
proven anything.
You don't agree with Judaism when it's time to, like, in other words, I think that if there was a mature rabbi, he would say, I understand why you did what you did in the debate, but I think you should honestly take a step back and look at the fact that, yes, we do identify these as messianic passages.
I said I identified every single one of them as messianic, Courtney. Everything is messianic. None of it Jesus fulfilled.
Okay,
that is the
let me
difference.
rephrase. I'm sorry. I meant to say of David.
Well, for example, I showed you the stone verse that you claimed was exclusive to the Messiah, son of David. And then I demonstrate that not only is this branch referred to as Zerubbabel who carried the stone, but also the servant, which is what the branch is also described as. So using your system of hermeneutics, where you're looking for anywhere it says stone and servant and all this sort of stuff, you are using a double standard by ignoring the initial context that this refers to Zerubbabel in the immediate context. Once again,
do not ignore
you can
that.
say it's about the Messiah all you want, but don't tell me Jesus built the temple, as it says, by the way, in Zechariah chapter 6, right? So in Zechariah chapter 6, it says that this individual, this tzemach, this branch, it says that he will build the temple. So
what do you think the Messiah said when he said, I go and prepare a place for you?
What do you think Zerubbabel did after the destruction of the temple when they went back to
You're
do what?
Jesus is on trial. And if you were to ask him that and he were to give his response and says, I go to prepare a place for you, you would have to accept that answer and say, okay, now how does that actually go against or add to anything? But you're not able to do that. This is a 2,000-year ongoing debate. Yehuda and Courtney are not going to solve it. This is because one side doesn't see something as messianic and the other side does.
That's not true. That's why it's
true.
never ending, is because you're misrepresenting my understanding. Things can be messianic without them. For example, Psalms 110, I understand to be messianic, but I don't understand it to be exclusive to only the Messiah. It has better fulfillment in Abraham, for example, because he was blessed by Melchizedek blessed Abraham.
Okay, let's go there. This is a perfect transition point.
Sure.
Because I'm glad that you brought that up.
Sure, I know you don't want to deal with Zerubbabel being the branch. I know we already have overwhelming evidence for that, Isaiah 7:14. So let's move on. To
listen,
let's move on.
You can believe that you won. That's fine. I think anybody that looks will see that I've made a clear picture from the very beginning all the way up to Isaiah 7. I've told you that there is a contextual understanding that there is a civil war happening. And this is just my final wrap-up statement so that everyone knows that I'm not disregarding the immediate context, that there was a civil war coming, but that he was not concerned for the civil war, that he was concerned that there would be someone that would replace the scepter, which ultimately says, hey, this is the promise of God, which tells us in 2 Kings 8, God promised David. Why would that even be mentioned if it wasn't for the fact that he said he promised a lamp? And I'm going to continue that into the next phase of our discussion. But
can I do a wrap up? If you're going to do a wrap up.
And yes, you may. And that the fact of the matter is, you claim that Isaiah 7's son is the fulfillment of this, and that he would have to be 65 years old before he even knew how to choose good or eat properly. That's asinine. And yet you tell me I am bastardizing the scripture. I am telling you I'm not bastardizing the scripture. I'm trying to give you a concise understanding from the very beginning of the book in Genesis all the way through.
So yeah, thank you. The concise understanding is Isaiah's word against Courtney's. Basically, that there is going to be the birth of a son who's born in the very next chapter. He's not saying it because it has no context to it. The word Alma is, he says, I was intimate with the prophetess and she gave birth. I want anybody after this video to look at Isaiah 7:16, compare with Isaiah 8:4, look at them with a straight face and tell me that they're not a fulfillment of each other. Just do that for me. Now, and if you still have any doubt in your mind that refers to, Isaiah's generation, look at Isaiah 8:18, where he says, my children are signs for Israel. And that's it. That proves that at the very least, the Alma refers to Isaiah's wife in the present generation. And if you want to say it has future fulfillment, fine, but that demystifies the Yeshua believers' obsession with it needing to be a virgin, or that there's going to be some sort of exclusive messianic fulfillment, and also that the word Alma, which we've demonstrated every way possible, is not exclusive to a virgin. Isaiah says it, Proverbs implicates it, and Proverbs chapter 30, and Deuteronomy 22 is really the final legal nail in the coffin to demonstrate that Alma is not the best word to use when describing a virgin in the Bible.
Okay, next phase. You were the one that wanted to discuss Melchizedek. And, I told you I thought for sure that Isaiah 7 would be a full video in and of itself. I was right. So if you want to go ahead and move into that, we can, whatever your beef is with Hebrews or anything like that. But I don't think that we're going to get very far either.
Oh, well, I mean, Psalms 110. I mean, that's when I look at, this is the same situation. Like, you want to look at Psalms 110. This is the same theme throughout the entirety of the video. I'm fine with this having ultimate application to the Messiah. However, I also am, so for example, it says, of David a psalm, the word of my word to my master, right at my right hand, until I make your enemies a footstool at your feet. The staff of your might, the Lord will send from Zion, rule in the midst of your enemies. Your people will volunteer on your day of battle or host, whatever, basically this idea that because of the beauty of your holiness, when you fell from the womb, and that your youth is like dew, the war swore and will not repent. You are a priest forever because of the speech of Melchizedek. Wonderful. And then it says, the Lord on your right hand has crushed kings on the day of his wrath. That's a really important verse to focus on, because this verse 4 and 5, because Melchizedek is only mentioned one other time in the entirety of the Bible, namely Genesis chapter 14. Now, what's interesting about Genesis chapter 14
I apologize.
is, you're good. Yeah. What's interesting about Genesis chapter 14 is it speaks about something that is very relevant to Abraham. And what you see here is it says, so scroll down a little bit. It says Melchizedek, there it is. See that in verse 18? It says, Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was a priest of the Most High God. And he blessed him, saying, Blessed be Abram of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be the Most High God, who hath delivered your enemies into your hand. And he gave tithes of all. Now, see that part about delivering enemies into your hand? What's happening? Scroll up a little bit again. So what did Abraham just get done doing? After Courtney, do you know why?
Yeah, it was the war, and he was given the people.
But what did he do? What was Abraham's accomplishment?
What do you mean? I just told you.
Who was he fighting against?
I can't remember that. Hold on.
It's right there in front of you. You can read it if you want.
I can't see that. I have bad eyes.
Okay. It's talking about. It says.
Hold on.
I can read it for you if you want. It
okay,
says,
that's fine, because I can't pull it up as quick.
It says, the 14th year, King Shandamir and the kings that were with him smote the Rephaims. So basically, this is the 4 kings versus the 5, right? You're familiar with this story?
I don't remember all 5, is what I'm saying.
You don't need to mention all 5. The only point is to mention that he defeated the 4 kings, right? That was his accomplishment here. Then we look at Psalms 110, verse 5. The Lord on your right hand has crushed kings in the day of his wrath, right? So you have a direct fulfillment of Abraham. Not only was he blessed by Melchizedek, right? Of the order of Melchizedek, he also crushed kings on the day of his wrath. And then it says, wait at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool at your feet. Go back to Genesis 14, and then you can see where it says explicitly the blessing that was, scroll down a little bit. It says, that highlighted verse, and blessed be the Most High God who has delivered your enemies in your hand. That's a fulfillment of Psalms 110, at least in the immediate context. This, in the immediate context, refers to Abraham. Now, please, do me the courtesy of not telling me that I don't say this is about the Messiah, because I have no problem with it applying to the Messiah. My issue is saying that it refers only to the Messiah. And that is what you are going to do inevitably, because you've done this with Isaiah 7. You've done this with Zerubbabel in there, and you've done this with literally every passage that has context in their original time. So I'm just telling you right now, this has to do with the Messiah, but not only the Messiah. That is my position.
And that's what I said in the beginning, that you will just say everything is messianic. So it looks as though you never lose, or you never have any, you don't have to prove, or you don't have to then have accountability for not believing that Jesus is Messiah. You say, oh, because
I mean, well, the thing is, this is actually in line with what, here's the thing. We're not using rabbinic texts, right, for a reason. But this happens to be what rabbinic Judaism believes. And it also happens to be what you believe. So
Rabbinic Judaism believes that that's about David.
No, you want me to show you what rabbinic Judaism says? I can show you several
sources of rabbinic Judaism, sir.
What?
Which opinion of rabbinic Judaism?
I mean, for one thing, Rashi. I can show you the Rashi.
Okay, so we're going to go to him rather than go to the earlier sages.
We can go to the early sages too. I can show you in the Talmud where it says it's about Abraham. You want to see that?
But what I'm saying is
oh, you don't want to go there now.
No, because we said
an amount of sources here.
No, we said that we would not. You said you didn't want. You said this, not me.
Right.
You said you did not want to discuss any Talmud because
we don't have to. You said that there were
Christians use the Talmud to prove that there is two comings of the Messiah, one as the lowly, and then one riding in the clouds.
Look.
So
I don't care. If you want to use whatever you want, we don't have to use anything in rabbinic writings to demonstrate my point that this is not exclusive to the Messiah. I gave you scriptural proof that it refers to Abraham. You said Judaism doesn't believe that. I said you're wrong. Okay. You walked into that. You were the one. Look, I agree. Notice that the only time I bring up rabbinic Judaism is when you misrepresent it. Anybody watch this video and you'll see I brought up rabbinic Judaism when you said that Tzemach only referred to the Messiah, and that's untrue. And I can show you rabbinic commentaries that say otherwise. But
mainstream rabbinic Judaism today, again, the joke.
Oh, you want me to show you the Rashi? Is that not mainstream rabbinic Judaism? Because I can show you the Rashi. We can play this game all day.
My point is that's why we're not.
Your point is you're wrong.
That's your opinion. There's so many opinions within Judaism, but what I'm trying to say,
then don't say that mainstream Judaism doesn't believe this.
Oh my God!
Really? So Rashi isn't mainstream Judaism now. Rashi isn't mainstream.
Is Tobias Singer not mainstream? I mean, he's pretty mainstream.
Tobias Singer is a rabbi that debates Christians. I don't know what to say. I mean, like he has, like, I would imagine that. Look, he's not like like the end all be all. Look, if you want to look at the sources, we can look at the sources. We weren't going to do that in the debate, so I don't need to. But I'm telling you right now that Abraham fulfills this independently of me bringing up the rabbinic sources, which you, by the way, said that rabbinic Judaism doesn't say. And I'm just telling you it does. So you walked into that.
I didn't walk into anything. I'm simply expressing, and it doesn't matter what I say. You're going to say that I'm wrong, but anybody can do.
I'll show you the sources to prove you wrong. I'll show you the sources to prove you wrong.
After this,
there's a difference between me saying you're wrong and me proving you wrong, right? I could say anything I want, but when you misrepresent what rabbinic Judaism says, I'm going to show you otherwise. And look, like I said, we can look at Genesis 14, independent of what the rabbis say, and compare it with what is said in Psalms 110. It just so happens the rabbis agree, but it also is the fact that the text agrees. Now,
so I'm going to point out something that, you talk about Abraham and Paul. Well, I believe, let me just go ahead and preface this. I believe that Paul wrote Hebrews, regardless of who, people believe, whatever. So Hebrews in chapter 7, verse 9 says, and this is like one of my first times, by the way, bringing up anything New Testament. One might say that even Levi, who collects the 10th, paid the 10th through Abraham, because when Melchizedek met Abraham, Levi or Levi was still in the body of his ancestor. I'm not sure if you're aware, but did you know that the Messiah came? Do you know what the order of Melchizedek is? Let me ask you.
Yeah.
What is it?
So Melchizedek was a priest of God Most High, and he was basically, before Abraham, came to faith in God, Melchizedek was the king of Salem. He was also a priest, and he was effectively the spiritual king and priest of the he was the spiritual leader, and he was in Jerusalem effectively, and that's effectively what we have according to the Tanakh only, is that he was a priest of Shalom, which is also known as Yerushalayim, and he brought out. Look, we're looking at Tanakh only, so this is what I got to work with.
So you think that's all the Tanakh has to say about Melchizedek?
It says that the speech. It says in Psalms 110, it says that the speech of Melchizedek is.
Why do you
say
speech? What word are you translating as speech?
It's a form of daber.
Yes, I know that, but why are you in what way do you say?
Well, look, if you want to say of the order, that's fine. I don't care.
Okay,
it doesn't matter.
That's what I'm asking. If you understand the order of Melchizedek, not the speech.
I'm explaining. I'm explaining to you what it is according to the Tanakh.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean that's what it is effectively. Is that it is a priesthood that was effectively started by Melchizedek and passed on to Abraham through the blessing that he gave to him. If we want to look at now, there's an implication there. If we look at Psalms 110 and understand Abraham as the subject of the psalm, which I've given textual evidence to demonstrate. So
you think that Abraham matches the Melchizedek figure when Abraham is the one that met with Melchizedek?
Well, it describes somebody who God was at their right hand when they went into battle, crushing kings. That's exactly what happened. You saw it, right? You saw Genesis 14. Abraham just got done doing what before he met Melchizedek?
Battling. And
battling who? Battling who?
Again, listen, would you let me explain what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, but I want you to tell me who did he defeat in battle? You can't say it because you know that it aligns with Psalms 110 too much, that your precious Jesus is being thrown out from, because he didn't do this. Your Jesus didn't defeat any king. So Abraham fits the psalm already by default. Abraham fits the psalm better than Jesus.
Okay, so Abraham.
Go ahead, Courtney.
So Abraham fits the psalm again, by the time you get to Psalm 110, God hopes that you read the previous passages, the ones that build up to that. So you're telling me that Abraham meets with, in Genesis, this Melchizedek figure, and then all of a sudden, later on in the Psalms, way on down the road, God says, you are the Melchizedek figure?
What do you mean way down the road? You're saying that King David is writing this psalm and it can only have a future context and have nothing to do with the past?
I'm saying that it has a future context, yeah, and I
already agree that it has a future context, but once again, you've made the same mistake throughout the entirety of the debate. Look, Courtney, I'm sorry you're debating Tovia Singer, who doesn't. This is why this debate, Look, I'm not doing anything wrong with the way that I'm debating you. I'm representing my side fairly and consistently. I told you from the beginning that everything can have a messianic connotation. Please do not take away the original context of what this is describing. If I give you textual evidence to support that it supports something else, I'm sorry, your New Testament is wrong if you're going to say that it only refers to the Messiah, because the Tanakh says otherwise.
How is it not about Jesus?
How is it not about Jesus? Because he didn't fulfill any of it.
So how do you know? How do you know he didn't? Because again,
absolutely. So it says, let's look at it. The Lord swore and will not repent. You are a priest forever because of the speech of Melchizedek. All I have to do is compare to Abraham. Did Melchizedek speak of Jesus? No. Did Melchizedek bless Abraham? Yes. So 1 for Abraham, 0 for Jesus. And then it says, the Lord at your right hand has crushed kings on the day of his wrath. So we know that Abraham just got finished destroying the 4 kings who defeated the 5, and that Melchizedek blessed him, saying, blessed be Abraham, who God has delivered your enemies into your hand, right? So that describes Psalms 110 very closely, almost perfectly. And then you have Jesus, who never fought any kings and basically died without even having any sort of
died without doing anything, right? He did nothing. So here's the thing.
He didn't do anything related to this psalm that we can tangibly understand scripturally.
That's incorrect. Remember when I told you that you're not allowed to use the New Testament against itself?
I'm not
can't
using
say
the
that
New
Jesus
Testament
did a
against
lot.
itself
You want
at
me
all.
to tell you how you are? You're saying that Jesus did nothing when the New Testament says he did a whole lot. The New Testament says that he broke the burdens of sin, not that he took away sin. Sin is still here, but the punishment for sin, i.e., eternal death, is not. Meaning, if you accept the salvation plan of God, then you are the chains of Psalm 38 and 40 that I mentioned way earlier in the debate in my opening statement, that is broken. And now
So what does that have to do with Psalms 110? You're
sit at
saying that
my
Jesus,
right hand.
you asked me how Jesus isn't the subject of Psalms 110. I don't see anything in the Psalm describing that.
So in the New Testament, it says that Yeshua sits at the right hand of the Father. And if you read the New Testament, which I don't think you've ever really read the New Testament in light of Messianic prophecies, maybe from a mainstream Christian perspective, but not in Messianic prophecies, that you would clearly see that the Messiah will come back. And we know this because Paul explicitly talks about passages that are in that day, the day of the Lord. And that is prophecy that you keep ignoring. You cannot say, like, this is what kills me here. You say that Jesus is not the Messiah. You say that these passages could be or are messianic, but they're not about Jesus. So it's like every guy out there could be the messianic figure except for Jesus. Then by your own
here's the thing. You're right about that. Actually, we do kind of agree. Is that I'm saying, yes, the way these prophecies are vaguely understood, they don't have specificity to the Messiah, which is my whole argument, is that I'm granting you, see, you've never had a debate like this, where I'm granting you full range to call everything messianic that you want to your heart's content. The burden of proof is on you to show that Jesus fulfilled this. I've given you more evidence contextually that the Bible contests, that proves that Abraham fulfilled this more during his lifetime than Jesus ever could during his lifetime. So everything that you're saying about this psalm that you think Jesus is going to fulfill in the future is exactly that, future. He didn't fulfill it, so it's all wishful thinking. Everything that you're saying with regards to this psalm and plenty of other things that we've discussed tonight, Jesus hasn't fulfilled. So that's why I can say with confidence that Jesus is not the Messiah. What?
So the Lord says to my Lord. Do you know what the word Lord there is in Hebrew?
So you have Yud K Vav K, and then you have Adoni.
No, that's vowel pointings. You have Adoni. Without vowel pointings, you have Adonai.
Look here,
vowel
Courtney.
pointing.
Look here, Courtney.
Let me finish my point.
Here,
you
Courtney.
know where I'm going.
Yeah. Let her make her point real quick.
It kills you, Yehuda. You know, when you know where I'm going, you speak over me because you know what I'm going to say. Vowel pointings were added after the time of Yeshua. Clearly, the New Testament quotes from Psalm 110 more than any other passage in the Old Testament Bible. This is to say that the passage is messianic. It is very easy to go in and remove or alter vowel pointings to make something say Adoni and not Adonai, which is why Yeshua clearly said, then why does, because most people believe the psalm is about David, why then does he call him my Lord? Because it's not a habit of Jews, nor any other culture, to call someone greater or someone lesser than you my Lord. I don't call my kids my Lord.
So what's interesting about that? I need to find the exact passage, but there's a situation where King Saul is he's still king, and he refers to David as, let me see exactly what the example is, but that's not necessarily always situations where or maybe it was King David to Saul, but I'll have to look for that later to demonstrate that. But basically, my argument on Hebrews is that the argument that it's trying to make is completely superfluous to the fact that, like, you made a statement, for example, that Levi was still in the loins of Abraham. So that means automatically that Levi is, I think the argument Hebrews is trying to make is saying, oh, well, Levi is inferior to the priesthood of Melchizedek because of this. Well, guess who else was in the loins of Abraham before, if we're going to look at Mary's genealogy and say that he was, so it shoots itself in the foot. Jesus also would fit that.
Yes,
so,
thank you. I appreciate that statement. When you're done, I have a point.
So the point is that puts them on an even playing field. Of course, you're going to bring up the virgin birth, which I've already disproved. So great.
No, you've not disproven that, but
that's where we are with
now,
it.
the point that I'm going to bring
I
up
still went
now,
against Isaiah's. I'll say that over and over again, and I think people will
the point that I'm going to bring up now is, yes, Paul was trying to, again, I believe Paul wrote Hebrews, or if not by his own hand, someone very close to him. He's trying to indicate that there is a greater priesthood than Levi. Does that offend you?
If there's a greater priesthood than Levi, what offends me is when you look at Psalms 110 and say that it exclusively refers to Jesus.
That's not what I asked you. I asked you, does it offend you if someone tells you that there is a greater priesthood than Levi's?
The only reason why it could possibly offend me is knowing that that's not true, and that the Levitical priesthood, at the very least, has relevance in the times of the Messiah. If you're going to tell me that the Levitical priesthood has no relevance in the time of the Messiah, I would say you are once again distorting my Tanakh. If you say that both, I don't know what your views are on that. You might you might have an opinion that the Levitical priesthood and the Melchizedek priesthood, as I understand, will have relevance in the Messianic era, and I don't really know which one is greater. I don't think there's any way to demonstrate that, especially using the Tanakh alone. But yeah, like I would say,
so you're actually correct there. So yeah, they will be running simultaneously side by side, but Melchizedek is a greater priesthood, and I can prove that with the Tanakh. So I want to go ahead and hone in on what Hebrews 7 is saying, because this offends Jews. This offends Jews many times, unless they're well studied. One might even say that Levi, who collects the tenth, because he's a priest, paid the tenth through Abraham, because when Melchizedek met Abraham, Levi was still in the body of his ancestor. Right here, verse 11, if perfection, focus on this word here, if perfection, why is it doing that with if perfection could have been attained through the Levitical priesthood, and indeed the laws given to the people established that priesthood, why was there still a need for another priesthood to come, one in the order of Melchizedek and not of Aaron? Now, where in the Tanakh would that be found? And also, I want you to focus on what this passage, this perfection is here. I'll just clearly tell you what it is. It's the resurrection. This perfection here leads to the resurrection, of which the Torah never gives a way to return for. Jews await for a resurrection. You're never going to get it by the Torah alone, and I will explain as we continue. But this perfection here is a resurrection. And the Melchizedek priesthood, I don't know why it keeps... Melchizedek priesthood was established back in Ezekiel. Let me just go here really fast. Pull this up. Excuse me. Not that passage. Ezekiel 44. I'm sure you're familiar with Zadokite priests. Are you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so were you aware that the Zadokite priest would have been through Melchizedek prior to someone installing removing them from the rightful heir as the priest, because God told them that they did what was right in God's eyes, and Levi did not, and removed.
Wait, you're talking about this in the past tense?
What do you mean?
This is future.
Verse 14.
Yeah, this is future. This is third temple prophecy.
But I'm saying that there is a reason why that they were removed. In other words, they were removed and someone else was put in their place, usurped their position, which is wrong. But
you're saying Melchizedek was removed in
the lineage of the Zadoks, which would have been through Melchizedek. Melchizedek is believed to have been Shem. We don't know, but it is believed.
Look, I didn't say it, but
I know. Yes. It is believed to have been Shem. Shem would have lived for a very long time, which would have ultimately taught Abraham and many others. And he would have died around the time of Jacob's son, And as that splits off, the priesthood is no longer with the person that is acting on the priesthood, as well as the king line. That splits. It now splits into two duties. The priesthood goes to Levi, and then the Judah has the kingly priest. So everyone that says you can't be a priest and a king, well, Zechariah tells us that will be restored, and there will be peace between the two. And we can get
both. That's referring to two separate people.
No, it's not. I have proof of
I can prove it to you. You want to go into that? I'd love to demonstrate that.
We will look at the Hebrew, but let me finish.
Absolutely.
So Melchizedek, I'm not sure if you're aware, but Yeshua would have descended from that line, because you remember when how much of the New Testament do you know? Mary goes off. She is found with child. She goes to visit her family. John's mother is pregnant.
Look, if Melchizedek is Shem, then literally we are all descended from, like, all people descended from Shem, which would be literally all of Israel would be priests of Melchizedek. And honestly,
but there is
what? Sorry?
But it hinges on the virgin birth.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
Not at all. I mean, now
I
understand. Yeah, now I understand why this is so important for you to explain, because your entire foundation of your argument has already been thrown off. But look, if you want me to beat a dead horse, then we can do this. This will be fun.
It hasn't. But the Levitical priests, who are descendants of Zadok, okay, here we go, and who guard my sanctuary, when the Israelites went astray from me, are to come near to minister before me. They are to stand before me and offer sacrifices of fat and blood, declares the sovereign Lord. They alone are to enter my sanctuary. They alone are to come near to my table and to minister before me and to serve me as guards. So with that being said, it is pretty clear that they have a higher priesthood, and that Aaron's priesthood.
Who had a higher priesthood? Who had a higher priesthood?
Melchizedek through.
Wait, it says Zadok. It says Zadok.
Yes, but I've already shown you that lineage. If you go back, and I can prove this, if you want me to, I can send you this in private message or whatever. But if you go back and follow that lineage all the way up, it leads you to John the Immerser, as is commonly called, his father being the last lineage of the Zadokite priests, who were.
Are you kidding me? We have priests today, like the last lineage.
We're talking about the Second Temple time.
I'm talking about today. We still have Zadokite priests that
exist.
There's
no temple. There's no temple.
Yes, exactly. So what's going to happen?
Temple, and you have no way. There's no temple, and you have no way to prove who is Messiah, son of David. None. The records were destroyed.
That's why look, understanding the Messiah, son of David, the proof is in the pudding. Jesus didn't fulfill the prophecies when
the bloodlines are gone. You have no way, according to your own standards.
The majority of by the way. The majority of Jews today are we're called Jews because we are descended from the kingdom of Judah, which primarily consisted of Benjamin and Judah. So
the issue with
chances are.
Listen, can I ask you, how do you know you don't know what you are? You truly don't.
We don't know. I don't know. I could be Benjamin. I could be Yehuda.
No.
I'm not Levi. I'm not Levi.
You could be Gad. You could be Dan.
Less of a chance, but the better chance. The better chance is that I'm either Yehuda or Binyamin. That's the better chance.
My point is, let me tell you why they're called the lost tribes, because no one knows who they are today. Now, the reason why, when Ezra came back, the reason why people attached themselves that were otherwise maybe intermingled from multiple different, the 10 tribes, they would have attached themselves to the people who would not have lost their identity as fast, which would have been Judah, which would have been the priest. Why? Because Judah is the king line, and Levi is the priest. This is why most Jews all identify as Jews. They don't call themselves Hebrews. They don't call themselves Israelites. They don't call themselves Gadites or anything, because they don't know what they are. So the only thing they do is identify as a Jew. But that
this is actually there's biblical precedence for this, by the way.
Yes, I know.
So, but, like in the book of Esther,
yes.
You have Mordecai. He's described as descended from Kish, from King Saul. Which, by the way, I found the passage that I was looking for, but we can look at that later. Where I talked about in Hebrews, it says that the blessed, the greater is always, or the lesser is always blessed by the greater. And I can show you an example where that's not true, where King Saul blesses David.
Oh my gosh, you're going to pick up like, okay, never
Well,
mind.
I mean, it's important because I want to demonstrate that Hebrews is false and doesn't, like I said.
Then you demonstrate that your own Tanakh is false then, because there are many times, like, for example, God is not a man. And then elsewhere it says God is a man of war.
Oh, interesting. You want to completely strawman the argument. Okay.
No, I'm not strawmanning. If you're
Very,
gonna
you
use one
absolutely
verse-
are. I'm talking about, look, it says in, for example, 1 Samuel chapter 26, it says, and Saul said to, this is verse 25, and Saul said to David, blessed be you, son of David, you shall both do great things and you shall prevail. And David went on his way and Saul returned to his place. Now let's look at Hebrews 7, building its case for Jesus being the only priest of Melchizedek. This Melchizedek Hebrews chapter 7. This Melchizedek was a king of Salem and a priest of God Most High. He met Abraham from defeating the from the defeat of the kings and blessed him. Abraham gave him the tenth of everything. First, the name Melchizedek means king of righteousness, and also king of Salem means king of peace. Without a father and mother, without genealogy, without beginning of the days of life, resembling a son of God, he remains a priest forever. Just think how great he was. Even the Abraham gave him a tenth of everything. Now, the law requires that the descendants of Levi who become priests collect a tenth from people, that is, from their fellow Israelites, even though they are descended from Abraham. This man, however, didn't trace his descent from Levi, yet he collected a tenth from Abraham and blessed him who had the promises. And without a doubt, the lesser is blessed by the greater. False. I just demonstrated that King Saul, unless you want to tell me that King Saul is greater than King David, then when we look at
so you're
First
saying
Samuel,
your argument is that if someone that is lesser says a blessing, a bracha over someone else, then that refutes what Hebrews says.
I'm saying Hebrews makes an absolute statement that is false. It says, and you can pull it up if you want.
Torah can make an absolute statement that can appear false.
It's saying without a doubt, the lesser is blessed by the greater.
But you're not looking at the context.
Superiority. To argue
the context is the priesthood, not a random blessing in the Tanakh somewhere.
Wait, sorry, say that again.
The context is the two priesthoods, not a random bracha said to someone somewhere, sometime in the Tanakh.
It says without a doubt. I'm looking at,
there's a clear distinction there where the oldest was switched. I mean, that's not the point that it's trying to make. You're strong man.
The issue here is that I already demonstrated that the whole, Jesus falls into the same category as Levi would if we use the loins argument. You already admitted to me that it appears that Shem would be, we can go into that later, but clearly there is a genealogy that is understood. It's not like he has no genealogy at all. And then
no one would have known the genealogy. The man lived like 800 plus years. I mean,
I would beg to differ, but this is a debate. This is not the time and place to demonstrate that.
He didn't descend from. Read what it says in Hebrews. He didn't descend from. Where is it at? I've got like 5 tabs.
Says he didn't descend from Levi, so that means that he belonged to a different tribe. It's arguing that like there's Judah has some superiorness in terms of the priesthood. Look. That's not what the Tanakh emphasizes. It doesn't emphasize the Melchizedek priesthood being superior to that of the Levitical priesthood, and therefore, the Levitical priesthood was supposed to be Melchizedek, and the Zadokian priests weren't really. That's through Pinchas, by the way. That is the priestly line that Zadok is through. It's through Pinchas, Aaron's grandson, and those are the priests. God willing, when the third temple was built, will make the sacrifices in the innermost parts of the temple. So that is what that is speaking about. It doesn't make any mention of Melchizedek there. I'm not saying Melchizedek has no relevance, but I'm saying you're asserting something that isn't there.
No, because I know the lineage, and I can prove this to you. I mean, again,
I know the lineage of Zadokian priests are through Pinchas. By the way,
I'm hoping that people go back and look at the lineage. I mean, it's.
Do you know who Phineas is? You know Phineas?
Yes, okay. Stab people through. I am very familiar with him. Anyways.
Right. So there's also another. So Malachi chapter 3, for example, right? So
messenger bears away.
Well, actually, let's look at Malachi chapter 2 instead, because this is where we're going to establish who is going to be the priests, right? So it says in here, it says, and you shall know that I have sent you this commandment, that my covenant be with Levi, says the Lord of hosts. This is Malachi chapter 2, verse 4. And it says, my covenant was with him, life and peace. I gave them to him, and with fear, and he feared me because of my name, and he was overawed. So this was the epitome of the priesthood. True teaching was in his mouth, and injustice was not found in his lips. In peace and equity he went with me, and he brought back many from iniquity. So contrary to what
you ignore
contrary to Hebrews' message, there was a precedent for Levi at a certain point where Levi actually did bring back the people and atone.
It never said that it wasn't. That's not what it's saying.
Hebrews says that it doesn't. It says that the sacrifices of the Levitical priesthood are weak and useless, and that there's a change in the priesthood. That's not what it says in Malachi chapter 2. It says teaching was in his mouth, true teaching, and justice was not found.
So you don't believe in a resurrection of the dead?
Of course I believe in a resurrection of the dead. I don't believe that Jesus was resurrected, and even if he was, it wouldn't prove him being the Messiah. But that's besides the point.
Let's go to Isaiah 53.
We can look at Isaiah 53 all we want, but it has not. Look, let's understand this. No. Let's understand this.
Isaiah 53.
We can do that all we want. I can go to Isaiah 53 all you want.
Right here. Isaiah 53. This is the passage that is from the Dead Sea Scrolls, Isaiah 53. These boxes here are explicitly different than what you find in the Masoretic text. The Dead Sea Scroll predates the Masoretic text by about 1,000 years. And so I have no problems with the Masoretic text, except for when it decides to alter or change messianic passages, of which this is. So here's what it says.
I agree with you, Courtney, by the way. I agree that it is about the Messiah. It is not only about the Messiah. This is your...
I disagree, and I'm trying
this is in a... Yeah, like
I
this
disagree,
is
and I'm trying
the theme of the debate, people.
Yes, it is.
Not
because you don't
to the Messiah.
Everything is messianic, but that's not...
By the way, let's before we get into this, notice,
I want
everybody to notice that there's no mention of David. You
don't want me to prove my point. That's shady looking on you.
I want you to, absolutely, but I want to start with the premise that there's no mention of a Davidic king here exclusively, right?
No,
like we agreed at the beginning.
Isaiah 53 says, who has believed the arm of the Lord, or who has believed our report? To whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? So again, I've already proven who the arm of the Lord is. So let's go forward. The Masoretic text reads very differently in Isaiah 53 than the Dead Sea Scrolls does. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is about 1,000 years older than the Masoretic text, we find some very interesting variant words that can alter the reading and understanding completely. The first box here, everyone look on your screen, you can see it right here. It says that the top word is ayin mem vav, which means his people rather than my people, as the Masoretic text says. While some may argue that the last letter in the Dead Sea Scroll is a yod, as it is in the Masoretic text, the letter yod is very similar to a vav, but only shorter in handwritten scrolls. For those people who don't know Hebrew, I'm saying this, I'm sure you're aware. However, the meaning changes with the vav at the end of ayin mem as opposed to the yod at the end. In short, if this is a vav at the end and not a yod, this word reads his people with third person singular possessive words for the transgressions of his people, thus proving vicarious atonement with him being the asham, which is found in Leviticus 5, which is the guilt offering, mentioned in verse 10, which was typically used for the sins one committed without knowing that they sinned, meaning a sin of ignorance, especially against the holy things of God, such as the temple, his holy days, the priest in the temple, etc. It was found in Leviticus 6 and 7. It's coupled with repentance, restitution, and when you realize that you did in fact sin, you would bring a sin offering called a chataf. Second square, this one right here. Now this one is interesting because this one had to have the core or the root word completely altered to make this read as it does in the Masoretic text. So it says the red square, make sure I have this at the top, The red square is a singular pronoun used, and that word is different yet again than the Masoretic text. The word in the Dead Sea Scroll is bet, which means in. Let's see, Yod, Mem, Tav, Vav, which means he will die, as opposed to the Masoretic text, which spells out bet, Mem, Tav, Yod, Vav. They will die. What is interesting to note is that you have to flip the place of the Vav right here to bring about the root word. You have to flip the place of the Vav, to bring about the root word death as the Masoretic text version of this word. In other words, the root stem with the spelling from the Dead Sea Scrolls brings the singular pronoun he will die to the reader's understanding, as opposed to they will die, as the Masoretic text indicates. Either way, with the Masoretic text, you still have vicarious atonement. They will die. Now, this last word, this one's completely missing from the Masoretic text. Completely gone. It's not there. They blotted it out. It's gone. Okay, it says the red square at the bottom middle is the word light. Remember when I said that word would become very, very relevant at the beginning of this debate, this lamp and this light? This word is completely missing from the Masoretic text, and it leaves the reader lacking the grammatical syntax needed to form a complete understanding of the object and its verb. Yireh is the action, and the object would, I can't keep it all on the same page. And the action would, in other words, that the object needs the seeing light so that you can understand what the passage is saying. Seeing light is a common term used for a resurrection. This is undeniable proof that the servant would bear the sins of the people via vicarious atonement, and then die as the Asham with the guilt offering from Leviticus, and then be resurrected. This cannot be Israel in part or as a whole, because God promised that Israel would never die out. So seeing light, these are the passages you can find in Job 33, 28 through 30, Psalm 36, verse 9, which is Messianic, Psalm 49, verse 19, which is Messianic, Psalm 56, 19,
Everything is Messianic about Jesus. Everything.
And yes, I can prove this to you offline. I'm
sure you can. I'm sure you can.
Psalm 119, 105. And you
see, my goodness.
The seed mentioned. Let me finish. I'm almost done.
Please. You're doing a wonderful job for my side.
Yeah, I am. As you can see, the seed mentioned here in verse 10 of Isaiah 53 is the seed that would be as faith as Abraham did. The faith that Abraham lived first before he walked out his faith in action and obedience, meaning Abraham didn't get circumcised first. That came way later in his walk, because the New Testament hinges on the fact that we are children of Abraham. And anyways, thus this was granted to him as righteousness. This faith, this belief before actions was granted to him as righteousness, that his seed would be blessed. Galatians 3, 14 and 16 explains this rather well. Feel free to go read it. But if you don't know, the blessing that it speaks of is the grafting in process, which is the Hebrew words ve'nivarechu, shows a beautiful picture of mingling and grafting in. In other words, this servant, by what he does for his people, the death that happens to him dying will bring forth light. He will see light, aka resurrected. And because of his resurrection, you are righteous. And thus that brings in the ve'nevarechu, the promise or the grafting in that was promised to Abraham by his faith. Go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, you clearly we switched topics completely just to talk about Isaiah 53. I'm going to, maybe we'll get back to what I was talking about Pinchas. Basically, I'm going to point out Numbers where it talks about the covenant of peace, Shalom, which is associated with Pinchas exclusively, which is what Malachi chapter 2, that reference to the covenant of peace with Levi, that refers to Levitical priesthood through Pinchas, right? And that will be restored according to Malachi chapter 3. So here's what I'm going to do. We're going to go to Isaiah 53. Well, we're going to talk about Isaiah 53 here. I'm going to share my screen.
You deny what Ezekiel 44 says?
That it's the Zadokian priesthood, which is linked back to Pinchas. I mean, that's exactly what Ezekiel 44 says.
Okay.
If you do the genealogy, Pinchas, by the way, Pinchas is Aaron's grandson. Pinchas's line is the line of Zadok. That's what it is. Do the genealogical research, and that's it. So that is what is going to be restored in the Messianic age.
What is your point against Hebrews 7 then? It's only pointing out that Melchizedek is great.
It doesn't say anything about Melchizedek in Ezekiel. You're superimposing your own view onto that.
No, I've already explained the line. This is why I moved on, because I've already explained my point.
Your point isn't relevant to the text. You're using complete, like there's nothing in the New Testament that even links the Zadokian priesthood to Melchizedek. It doesn't say that the sons of Zadok are actually Melchizedek priests. That's literally something that you pulled out of your
No, and I can show it.
It doesn't say that, I promise you. Like,
I look right over your head.
You show me the chapter and verse where it says that
John the Immerser
Melchizedek priests originally, seriously, like this
John
is
the Immerser, which was related to Yeshua, came through the Zadokite line. His father was a Zadokite.
Okay. How does that have anything to do with Ezekiel?
Mary.
How does that have anything to do with Ezekiel, the third temple of Ezekiel? That has nothing to do with it. That has nothing to do with it. That has nothing to do with it.
The lineage in Luke takes you all the way back to the first man. Why does it do that? Because that's the lineage of his mother. And then
so John the Baptist is a priest of Melchizedek, even though the New Testament doesn't say anything about that. Jesus is a priest of Melchizedek, because you literally, Courtney, I would suggest that you come up with an argument that people can actually follow instead of going around picking whatever you can that says stone. Literally your argument can be summed up like this. Every time it says stone, servant, or lamb, or whatever, like it's seriously absurd. But anyway, let me get Isaiah 49. Look, your word is against what the prophet says. We showed it with Isaiah. We showed it with Zechariah.
Like I explained it.
My opinion. I showed you the verses. I literally showed you the verses where the stone was associated with Zerubbabel and you ignored it. I showed you the verses where Isaiah identified his son with the birth.
And I did not ignore
Alma, and you literally ignored it. Literally said that can't be it.
Oh my gosh.
Let's ignore Isaiah. So let's go and actually see what Isaiah has to say.
Every time I say Revelation speaks of it, you talk over me. I did not ignore it. Do not say that I've ignored anything that you've
Revelation takes it out of context, and it doesn't say what the Tanakh says. It absolutely does. Okay. Courtney, I'm sorry. Look, I can't wait for people to see this debate and see.
Me too, because they will see that not only has the Masoretic text tampered with the scripture while you're proclaiming Christians.
I didn't even make that argument. Okay, I don't need the Masoretic text to demonstrate why Isaiah 53 has nothing to do.
Okay, so what text are you using then?
I'm using Isaiah 49 to build up my case.
What do you think that is? Masoretic text, man.
Hey, if you want to use whatever text you want, let's try Isaiah 49:3. It says, "You can tell me."
Text is the authoritative text of Jews today, meaning they are not reading.
Okay. So you tell me where I'm mistranslating and where it's really supposed to say Jesus is your Lord and Savior. You show me that. You show me that, Courtney. Show me where it says in the Tanakh that my servant is Yoshka. It doesn't say that. Let's listen. Watch.
Oh, I've already shown you the
Isaiah 49:3. He said to me, "You are my servant Israel, about whom I will boast." That's where it starts. It says, "You are my servant Israel, about whom I will boast." And then he says in Isaiah 49:4, "And I said, I toiled in vain, I consumed with my strength for naught and vanity. Yet surely my right hand is with the Lord, and my deed is with God. And now the Lord whom formed me in the womb as a servant to him, said to bring Jacob back to him, and Israel shall be gathered to him. And I will be honored in the eyes of the Lord, and my God was my strength. And he said to me, it is too light for you to be my servant, to establish the tribes of Jacob, and to bring back the besieged of Israel, but I will make you a light of nations, so that my salvation will be to the ends of the earth." So how is this reconciled? How can Israel bring back Israel? The answer is simple. Isaiah 49:3 refers to a specific part of Israel, namely the righteous remnant. God promised, you would agree, Courtney, that God has promised a righteous remnant throughout the generations, right?
Yeah.
Right. So verse 5 refers to the remnant bringing back the rest of Israel to righteousness. And finally, verse 6, to the newly restored Israel being a light unto the nations through the revelation of truth through Hashem. In other words, this is a two-step process. The righteous remnant of Israel will bring back the rest of Israel to righteousness, Isaiah 49:3-5. 2, the newly restored nation of Israel will be will serve to be a light unto the nations, Isaiah 49, verse 6. So ultimately, the nation of Israel is the servant who will be a light unto the nations. However, in order to get to that point, the righteous remnant of Israel must first gather back the rest of Israel to Torah. It is a two-step process. The servant is the righteous remnant of Israel, and there's some verses leading up to it in Isaiah 53, like Isaiah 51, verse 7, hearken to me, you who know righteousness, a people that has my Torah in their heart, clearly speaking about Israel. Fear not the reproach of man, for the revelings will not be dismayed, showing that they will be despised throughout the generations. This is yet another verse that highlights the suffering of God's righteous servant, Israel. Isaiah 54 even refers to the servants of the Lord, Isaiah 54, 17. Any weapon whetted against you shall not succeed, and any tongue that contends with you in judgment you shall condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their due reward from me, says the Lord. So we have the idea that Israel is identified as servants in Isaiah 54 in a plural form, and Israel in Isaiah 49 is described as the servant bringing back the rest of besieged Israel to be a light unto the nations. Then we go to Isaiah 52:15, where it says it describes the Gentile kings who will shut their mouths because of their astonishment of Israel's vindication by Hashem. Isaiah 52:15, so shall he cast down many nations. Kings shall shut their mouths because of him. For what they have not been told, they saw, and what they had not heard, they gazed. And then Micah 7:16 through 17 echoes this statement, right, of Isaiah 52. It says, nations, in Micah 7:16, shall be ashamed of all their might, and they will place a hand upon their mouths, and their ears shall become deaf. And they shall lick the dust as a snake, as those who crawl on the earth, and they shall quake from their imprisonment. They shall fear the Lord our God, and they shall fear you. And now there's a famous verse in Isaiah, I think it might be Isaiah 9, where it says that the servant will not, have any deceitful speech found in their mouth. So Isaiah 53, verse 9, I think it could be verse 10. I can't remember which, but it says, the remnant of Israel shall neither commit justice nor speak lies, neither shall deceitful speech be found in their mouth. They shall graze, lie down, and with no one to cause them to shudder. So we also have textual evidence to support with in Isaiah, and let me see if I'm going to look for that real quick here.
Okay, so while you look for that, can I just ask, is your point that Israel is called a servant?
My point is that leading up to Isaiah 53, Israel is called the servant. And like at the beginning of the debate, we had a Davidic king at the end of days that is described as, we both agree that refers exclusively to the Messiah, son of David. For whatever reason, I don't know what that could be. Maybe it has something to do with it being called David, their king, in the end of days. That might have something to do with it. But it's interesting that we disagree on Isaiah 53, Isaiah 7:14, Zerubbabel, all these things that aren't exclusive and talking about the end of days exclusively. And Isaiah 50,
the suffering servant part is what we disagree upon.
Right. So I understand it to refer to, look, I agree that it can also refer to the Messiah. Once again, Isaiah 53, fine, servant can be the Messiah, but don't you dare tell me it doesn't refer to Israel as well, and that it has fulfillment in the nation.
Dies and is resurrected.
What?
That would be what you're saying. Israel would die and then be resurrected. Did you read Isaiah 53?
So if we take Isaiah 53 hyper literally and we look at the verse where it says, oh yes, because when it says that Isaiah, for example, it says in Isaiah 53 that it says that the servant will have offspring. And for some reason, that part is metaphorical, but the rest is hyper literal. Right?
No. I explained the seed. The seed mentioned, the seed of the people that are resurrected. Is a resurrection passage.
Oh, okay. So this can't refer to anybody but the Messiah when Israel has suffered throughout the millennia. Literally, the scripture actually says that the servant refers to Israel. It says that Israel will bring back the rest of the remnant.
Zechariah calls the Messiah a servant, but you conveniently say that's not David, son of David.
I said Zechariah refers to the Tzemach as I didn't say it didn't refer to David. I said once again, Courtney, this is enough. I've really had enough of you misrepresenting what I say. I never said I said Isaiah 53 is about the Messiah. I said that Tzemach is about the Messiah, and you have done this literally a dozen times throughout the debate, misrepresenting my position. All those things are about the Messiah. However, they also refer to Israel, for example, in Isaiah 53, not just the Messiah included with the rest of Israel. And I just gave you textual evidence to support that.
And also, I give textual evidence and you ignore it.
Because it's false. It doesn't fit with the context of what is going on. I give you textual evidence to demonstrate that it look, I give you textual evidence that it's not hyper literally referring to offspring, and you ignore that. And you say, oh, well, that everything else fits with Jesus perfectly, when really it didn't. Like, the only reason why you associate this with Jesus at all is that the New Testament gives you an indication that it might, not because any of these things actually came true, right? So that's ultimately, yeah. I mean, everything is hinging on, oh, let's assume the resurrection is true because the New Testament says it is. You haven't given us any reason. Courtney, you haven't given us any reason.
I have, but your point.
No, you didn't let me finish. You haven't given us any reason to trust the New Testament as a legitimate source for interpreting the Tanakh, because every time you bring up a passage saying it refers to Jesus, I give you a better answer. And
no, that's in your own mind. I know you're very arrogant to think that you're giving better answers, and you can think that, and I'm sure Jews will think that. But the fact of the matter is intellectual people who study the Bible will see that I've given far more scriptures to uphold my position, and that I've now showed you not only the Dead Sea Scrolls, but that the fact of the matter is that these messianic passages have been altered out of the very authoritative text that you Jews read. That's kind of shady.
It's not shady when we look, I'm fully admitting messianic context here. You are falsely accusing me of saying it has nothing to do with the Messiah. I am fine with it.
For the 100th time, when I say the Messiah, I mean Jesus.
Okay, well, Jesus does not have to do with this passage, and I'm demonstrating why. You are saying things, your entire case, you've been saying things like Jesus is the stone. I give you a better answer. Zerubbabel is actually being spoken about here. Okay, Jesus is the priest like Melchizedek. Okay.
So who's the right arm of God?
Actually, Abraham is the fulfillment of that. Okay, Jesus is Isaiah 9. Well, actually, Hezekiah is, because it says from now.
No, I mean, it doesn't say, none of that is what.
I'm saying that's what I've demonstrated scripturally. I'm saying I've demonstrated this scripturally from now into eternity, and you say, no, it has to refer to.
Because it's messianic. What you're missing is you think that I am saying the moment Isaiah says what it says, you think it was in that time forward. I never said that. That's
Isaiah says that. Isaiah says that. You have to abandon the actual meaning of what Isaiah says and ignore it.
We've already discussed it. We're not going to rehash this out with Alma and what he says. We've already discussed. Is it a 65-year-old?
Exactly. Look, I told you this debate would have been over at the beginning if you actually listened to reason. I knew you were going to take me down.
The one who says that a 65-year-old baby of Isaiah. You still
won't even admit, after I showed you Deuteronomy 22 refers to the legal definition of a virgin as Betula exclusively, you still have the nerve to say that Alma is a better specifier because you think 7 times, even the time when I demonstrated with more evidence on my side that it refers to an adulterous Alma.
80-year-old women.
Literally 2 strikes against you there. And Isaiah is the 3rd strike. 3 strikes, you're out. Alma,
80-year. You're ignoring my past. 80-year-old women can be Betula. The point of the New Testament is to point out that she was also a young maiden. Now you have a problem with Isaiah using Alma and not being able to prove that all other times this woman was a virgin. I'm sorry that offended you.
You traded it with Proverbs and you came up with a.
You admitted that it was ambiguous, so you can't use an ambiguous text.
Oh, guess what isn't ambiguous? Deuteronomy chapter 22. That was the clincher. That's what I was saying. I don't need to use Proverbs to demonstrate it. I said, I told you, I don't need to use Proverbs.
Can you step in here, because we're going back and forth, and it's not going anywhere. At this point, it's fruitless. There's no fruit coming from this.
I think there's a lot, but yeah, step in, please.
Well, I mean, if you guys just keep in mind that, I mean, you guys got to let each other finish talking. You have to let each other finish. If one talks, the other one listens. When that one's done talking, I mean, it's fruitless because y'all ain't listening to each other, to be honest with you. I mean, if I'm going to be, as an outside person here saying my unbiased opinion, you guys got to listen a little bit more.
Well, I don't know how much more time I have. Again, my husband takes my children and runs off with them to a park or something. So can we wrap this up? Because like I said, I don't think it's going anywhere.
Yeah, whenever you're ready to make a closing statement, just just like you did, So if you're ready, Courtney, we can make our closing statements, and then if you have a YouTube channel or a Facebook channel that you want to plug into, go ahead.
Well, I want to give him the opportunity to finish his point, but yelling at me saying that I've misrepresented him when I've pointed out what mainstream Judaism says, and things like that. So it's just circular at this. We're just going back and forth, and there's no actual discussion of the text. I bring up points and I'm told everything's messianic. So if everything's messianic, then there's no way to say it's not about Jesus. I bring up text that the servant, which would be messianic, he's called a servant. But again, all the passages that I talk about, he's a servant, he's a branch, he's this, all that is just ignored. And so if that's ignored, then there's no points in this debate. I accept what he's saying, that Israel is called a servant. That's why I asked him, let's cut to the gist of it. Is Israel a servant? Yes, Israel is called a servant, but Israel is not the only servant.
I agree.
Okay, so in Isaiah 53, this figure dies. This figure is resurrected. Again, if we're going to talk about what the New Testament says about Jesus, it says that he fulfills that scripture. Now, you can't prove that Jesus does not fulfill that scripture.
Okay, I guess. Here's the thing.
I thought Yehuda was at the point that the scripture, could fit Jesus, but it could fit other people as well. That's what yeah,
and that's kind of where I'm going with it. Is if you want it to fit Jesus, I guess there's a slim possibility that maybe he would, but I wouldn't say that it proves him to be the Messiah in any way, because it's not exclusive to the Messiah. That's my point.
Okay, so again, which makes me say that I bring up the passages about the arm of the Lord being revealed, and then the passages where it says, yet it pleased the Lord to crush him and to cause him to suffer. And although he makes his life an offering for sin, he will see offspring and prolong his days. So here he is dying, yet the Lord says he's going to prolong his days. And notice again in verse 11 that the word light was removed just in case. God wants you to know that this is a resurrection, and he will see light, aka be resurrected, and be satisfied. And then it says, by his knowledge, my righteous servant will justify many and will bear their iniquities. So the point is it can't be anyone else. Again, the New Testament is who I'm defending. I'm not defending the previous people that say they were Messiah or whoever else, because this text is exclusively applied to Yeshua in the New Testament. And so what you then as a Jew have to do is say, is this right? Is this applied to him correctly? Well, it says he's going to die. Okay, he died. Says he's going to be resurrected, yet it says that he's going to prolong his days. How did he prolong his days if he died? And then it says that through him, many will be justified. They will be made zadik, like they'll be made righteous and just. And so if you look back at all of this, you don't get a picture of a random Israelite or a random Jew or a random anybody. You get the picture of only Yeshua. That's it. That's what I'm trying to say, is that while you say it can be anyone, I'm saying No, Yeshua is who's on trial. And he said, this is my defense. He threw it out there. And you then have to go, well, Isaiah 53, I'm reading. Well, this is what happened in the New Testament. Well, that seems to match.
So let's look at the Tanakh. Let's look at the Tanakh then and see what the Tanakh has to say and see how many parallels we can see. So you're right. I was just about to finish my argument about this. There's more to say, obviously, but if you can see here, I want you to look at what I've highlighted in red. So Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 13 says, the remnant of Israel shall neither commit injustice nor speak lies, neither shall deceitful speech be found in their mouth. They shall graze and lie down, and no one shall cause them to shudder. And let's zoom in here. Let's zoom in here so you can see this. Isaiah 53:9, still speaking about the servant, right, Courtney?
That's after a resurrection, but yeah.
And he gave his grave to the wicked and to the wealthy, with his kinds of death, because he committed no violence and there was no deceit in his mouth. Connect these words, the remnant of Israel. This is not a singular person. The remnant of Israel refers to a collective group of people. The righteous, who Courtney admitted earlier, is a promised group of people who will exist throughout the generations that Israel exists. So here we have a direct parallel to the remnant collective, not just the Messiah. The Messiah is among the remnant. I have no issues with that. I do have an issue with saying that Isaiah 53 refers to a singular person and only the Messiah. And moving on to Isaiah 60, it speaks of the future Israel who was previously despised by the nations as being vindicated at the end of days, also echoing in line with the suffering, despised servant of Isaiah 53.
Leave this page up, please. I have a point to make.
Oh, you can't see it?
No, leave it. No, go back up to where you can see Isaiah. Stop. Leave this page up. I have a point to make when you're done.
Yeah, and it says the children of your oppressors shall go to you bent over. And those who despised you shall prostrate themselves at the soles of your feet, and they shall call you the city of the Lord, the Zion, the Holy One of Israel. So there you have it. The suffering servant of Isaiah 53 is ultimately the nation of Israel. Please note that the Messiah is a part of Israel too. And I would also like to demonstrate that these prophecies here, right? Isaiah 11:1, a shoot shall spring forth from the stem of Jesse, and a twig shall sprout from his roots. You believe this refers only to the Messiah, right? You would say this refers to Jesus and only Jesus? Right? How about this? Ezekiel 37:24. And my servant David shall be king over them, one shepherd for them, and they shall walk in my ordinances and observe my statutes and perform them. Does that refer exclusively to Jesus and no one else? My servant David?
My servant. Yeah, I mean, typically.
Right. Okay. So you understand, we're in agreement on these, because I also agree that these refer exclusively to the Messiah, son of David, and no one else. Okay. You say it's Jesus. I say it's a future king. Then
did you hold on. Did you say Isaiah 11 was also?
I just showed Isaiah 11. Yeah.
Yeah. But I couldn't. Right. I'm asking.
Yeah, I agree. We're in agreement there. That's referring only to the Messiah, no one else.
Okay. So. Okay.
Yeah. So then Hosea chapter 3, verse 5, we already discussed this. You admitted that refers only, it's very clear, David, their king, and they shall come trembling to the Lord at the end of days, right? So we're in agreement there, right? That refers exclusively to the Messiah, no one else. You say that's Jesus, I say it's someone else, right? We're in agreement?
Yes.
And then Jeremiah 30, verse 9, where it says, they show, do you see the pattern here? David, their king, whom I was set up.
I need you to.
We all agree here. Now let's look at Isaiah 53.
No, please.
Is there any mention of a Davidic king there? Any mention of a Davidic king?
Wait, what? What are you asking?
In Isaiah chapter 53, we can pull up Isaiah chapter 53.
Leave it there. Leave that page there, because I want to point out something. Just because it doesn't say the Davidic king doesn't mean it's not about the Davidic king. That's what you and
I agree. I'm not saying that's the only way to determine a prophecy that's exclusive to the Messiah,
okay,
son of
David. How do you determine if a prophecy is about the Messiah if it doesn't say David? Please tell us.
Well, there's a certain degree of contextual understanding. End of days is a very good indicator of that it's something that will be fulfilled in the future of the end of days. So that gives us some relevance to it. But when we have Israel surrounding the passages, right, I can even give you a passage in Isaiah chapter 55, very close to Isaiah 53, where it mentions the word David. And I guarantee you and me will both be in agreement that this refers to the Messiah, son of David. Yet for some reason in Isaiah 53, we're a disagreement there.
Because this servant dies, are you saying that the remnant dies out?
No, I'm not taking Isaiah 53 hyper literally like you are.
That's my point. See, do you see how we're at a stalemate? Because you say
you take things hyper literally that you think fit Jesus, and then you take things poetically like whatever, Proverbs.
And likewise you do as well. And likewise, admit it, you do as well. Yes or no?
What?
Likewise, you do as well. Yes or no?
I'm demonstrating contextually that you are inconsistent with your interpretation.
Likewise, you do as well. You say Isaiah 53 is not hyperliteral, yet you admit that it could be about a Messiah because many passages are messianic. So you take something
it's not exclusive to a singular individual.
It is actually. I just literally read the Dead Sea Scrolls and proved that. I
just proved to you that the surrounding context of the chapter implicates that it's not referring exclusively to one person, that rather it's referring to the servant. The servant is, Israel's referred to the servant throughout the entirety of the servant songs. You know this. So why all of a sudden would it change to the Messiah, son of David, and not even mention the Messiah, any sort of Davidic connection to it, and then it's definitive.
So now you're asking why would God structure the Bible the way he did?
Well, by the way, like I'm telling you, and I want to be able to share this on the screen, this is just 2 chapters away from Isaiah 53. Check this out. This is Isaiah chapter 55. Now,
that is irrelevant. Listen,
it is relevant because it's the context surrounding it.
No.
Apparently,
Okay, so
you don't want to talk about context. It says,
okay, listen, I really got to wrap it up. So I want to.
Okay, well, I want to. Do you agree with this prophecy? It says.
No, I don't want to go any further until
I know, because you don't want to see where we agree. It says in Isaiah 55:3.
Just hold on, Courtney. Do you need to wrap it up?
I do, and I do need to wrap it up because it's getting dark here. But I want to. I'm not saying. I don't know if you know that song, Isaiah 60 is used by Paul in reference to the Messiah. So all the passages, I was trying to agree with you, but you wouldn't stay on them. All of those passages are about the Messiah, but the problem is you're not seeing that it brings forth the resurrection. So Paul tells you that in Isaiah 60 that the light there is the Messiah. So in Ephesians, I think it is 5. I think it's Ephesians 5. Give me 1 second. I had it pulled up, but I guess it got booted out of the way.
Share the screen.
Do you have it pulled up or?
No,
sorry, I literally had it pulled up, but I guess I closed out the wrong one. Let me see. Let me do it this way. And I mean, everybody can read it without me needing to show it to you. I mean, you can go and read Isaiah 60 and then look at Ephesians. I need to go to a Bible hub. That way I have all the passages pulled up right.
Ephesians what?
I can't remember if it's 5 or if it
I got 5 right here.
Ephesians 5, I think it's 8. I think it's 8. I have it in my Bible.
For ye were sometimes darkness, but now ye light, and the Lord walk as children of light.
Yeah, so it's a reference to a resurrection. That's what he's trying to get people to understand there. And when he was talking about all the passages and he was listing them, I kept going, yeah, I agree. I kept trying to say
all of those were about Israel, by the way. Messiah included.
It's verse 14 of Ephesians. So if we look at Ephesians verse 14, you'll see that Paul tells you, so it goes, yeah, I had it pulled up, sorry. This is why it says, let me go up a little further. For you were once in darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Live as children of light, for the fruit of the light consists in all goodness, righteousness, and truth. And find out what pleases the Lord. Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. It is shameful even to mention what is disobedient to do in secret. But everything, verse 13, everything exposed by light becomes visible, and everything that is illuminated becomes light. This is why it said, Wake, sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. So Paul was not redoing the Bible. He was giving his commentary explaining that the passage was indeed a and when I say messianic, let me make it clear, I'm talking about Yeshua, because it says, arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord will rise upon you. See, darkness covers the earth, and a thick darkness is over the peoples, but the Lord rises upon you, and his glory appears over you. Nations will come to your light, and kings to your brightness of your dawn. This is a resurrection passage. This is why he pulled it out and said, look, it is of Messiah, son of David. I agree. The only difference is you didn't know that Paul quotes from that telling you that it's about Jesus. Why? Because Isaiah 53, he was resurrected, and in his light, you see light. That's
why do you think that I don't know these things? I know that Paul takes the Tanakh out of context. Like, I'm aware of it.
Out of context. If you look
absolutely
at the
it is. It doesn't say anything. Look, and I don't know why I can't bring this passage up, but I want to bring up Isaiah 55 verse 3.
So my point is ignored about Isaiah, the light. You don't believe that light refers to a resurrection?
Courtney, I don't know what to say to you. You're like stones and light and all this absolute nonsense. Like Courtney, I can't take you seriously. I'm just going to be honest. I really can't take you seriously when you think you're making an argument that makes sense and you're really just throwing fluff. You might as well tell me every time it says the word son, it refers to Jesus. Every time it says the word this is like a caricature of a debate.
You don't want to answer is what I'm hearing.
Courtney, I absolutely disagree that every time it says the word light, it refers to a resurrection.
No, that's not what I said.
If you want to say that the word light might have some vague association with the idea of a resurrection, okay. But to say that it's association, you know the difference between specificity.
Hold on. Again, you guys, we are getting to the point where we're not listening again. It's just one at a time. Please.
I just would like my question answered so I can. That's it.
No, Courtney. No, I don't. No. I think it's pretty obvious that the answer is no. I don't think that the word light automatically refers to a resurrection. And by the way, if you want to have another debate about this, even if the resurrection happened, which I don't believe is happened, if your Jesus claims to be God, then even if a resurrection happened, he would be a false God and a God that we should not follow due to what it says in Deuteronomy 13, that even if somebody says they're a prophet, they perform a miracle, even if they do that, then we are to not follow them if they tell us to worship other gods who we haven't worshipped before. Nobody worshiped Jesus in the Tanakh. Therefore, Jesus is a foreign God that we do not know. I can show you in Deuteronomy 13. I
am very familiar with the passage, but I am not even a Trinitarian. You know this.
But you believe Jesus is God, right? You believe he is.
I'm not a Trinitarian.
I'm not asking you for a Trinitarian. I'm asking, do you believe he is God?
God as in Elohim, do
you believe that he created the world? Do you believe that he is literally your creator?
Hashem? No.
Yes. Do you believe that Jesus is Hashem?
No, I've already said this. I'm not a Trinitarian.
Well, look, people are very ambiguous. So look, fine. Either way, I apologize if I misrepresented your understanding, but please forgive me if Christians and Messianic believers are not very clear into what that means. You said something about, Psalms 110, using it as though he had some sort of divine sonness that made him like God or something. And you weren't very clear about that.
You don't agree with divine counsels. That's your issue.
I agree with divine counsel. I don't believe that Jesus is God incarnate.
I didn't say that he was. I almost said the name.
Okay, well, I apologize if that's what. So fine, I won't use Deuteronomy 13 if that's the case. But
the
point is, look, I'm trying to represent you as accurately as possible. I can't say the same for you. But looking at this from the perspective, look, if you want to, apologize to me and let me know that your understanding of Zechariah chapter 3, verse 8 is within, that you said rabbinic Judaism rejects the idea that the branch refers to anybody but the Messiah.
I said that don't misquote me. I said it is universally agreed upon by Christians and Jews that all 5 mentions of the branch in the Tanakh are about the Messiah, son of David.
You said exclusively. You said exclusively
That is
earlier.
what I said. You are
earlier. You said now you've changed it. Now
no, I did not. Anybody can go back.
Earlier you said it was exclusively.
I say
Look, we can look in the recording earlier, and we can
do.
We can
I
see
said,
it.
Yehuda, I really have to go. I said this, that I say, because the New Testament attributes the Messianic passages, that, again, Messianic in my way of saying, the son of David, who I believe is the Messiah, who I believe is Yeshua, that Zechariah 3 and 6 and Jeremiah and Isaiah 11 and all the other passages of the Semach is about Yeshua. Now, if Judaism agrees that those passages are indeed about the Messiah, then those are the ones that since we both agree, or all agree, that those are the ones I should focus on. And in those, the Messiah figure is called a servant. He is clearly identified as a servant. So I don't know what else. You're very open.
We can listen to the debate earlier. You claimed you were not giving any room for the Tzemach to be defined as anything but the Messiah, son of David. And you said that
the Messiah, son of David. I'm saying that.
You understand the difference, Courtney? Like,
wow.
I don't understand. This is very frustrating that you do not understand the difference between something very simple. Do you understand what exclusive means? Is that in your vernacular or your vocabulary? Exclusive means only refers to the Messiah. Judaism does not believe that the word Semach exclusively refers to the Messiah every time it's mentioned 5 times in the Bible. That is a false statement.
It is not a false statement to say that Judaism and Christianity both agree that the 5 mentions of the branch are about the son of David. I don't know what else you want me to say.
That's true. However, it is false to say that Judaism No, because you said earlier that it only referred to the son of David and no one else. And that's not what traditional Judaism believes. And that's not what the Tanakh shows, as I destroy your argument earlier with your stone nonsense.
You didn't destroy my argument.
Look, are you stoned? Like, I don't even know what to say. Like,
what is the matter with you, Yehuda? Your spirit is really off, man.
I mean, look, if you're going to make arguments that make absolutely no sense, then this is how you're going to be. Like, it literally makes no sense. Like, how you can look at these passages and make up like some almost like conspiracy nonsense. Like, that's what it sounds like. What
conspiracy have I made up?
That Jesus is the Messiah, ignoring all of the passages where ignoring the original context of what Isaiah is speaking about and saying, pay no attention to my son, even though I said this is going to be fulfilled in my day, where it's going to be in things to come. And this has nothing to do with my era. Isaiah 9:5, through 6. This has nothing to do with King Hezekiah. It's all about Jesus, who never ruled on the throne at all, despite the fact that Hezekiah ruled, and it says from now into eternity. Pay no attention to Zerubbabel in, Zechariah chapter 3, verse 8. Even, I developed this whole argument around a stone in,
it's more than just the stone. It's the arm. It is the branch. It is the banner. It is the mercy of the Lord. All of these passages
that Jesus didn't fulfill. He's not a banner to anything. If you look at Isaiah 11, he didn't fulfill any of Isaiah 11. It talks about
listen.
What part of Isaiah 11 did?
Hold on, Yehuda. Hold on. Let her answer. What part of let her answer.
Isaiah, there are passages of the 5 mentions, each 5 mention of the branch. Do you ever wonder why there's 5 gospels? Each one of those shows you a picture of the 5 mentions of the branch. Each one that's why, like Tovia Singer will also say statements like, well, Mark never found it worthy enough to say this as John did. John's gospel has him to be like a divine one. And then Matthew is really kingly, and Mark called him the son of man. And this is because each one of these, Mark had a job. His job was to focus you on the son of man passages, which are of the 5 mentions of the branch. Each one of these is a a description of or a characteristic. So Mark is the servant of Zechariah 3, and he is called the Son of God. Okay, then you have Matthew, the king of Jeremiah 23, verse 5. His job, this is why Matthew is often stated by Christians to be very Jewish sounding, because it's writing about the Jewish king to come. And then you have Luke, who identifies him as the Son of Man from Zechariah 6, verse 12. And then you have John, which identifies him as the Word, the Son of God, in Isaiah 4, in particular, verses 2 and 4. And then you have finally Revelation, the judge, of which Jeremiah 33, verse 15 discusses of the Tzemach. So I'm not sure why you have made some of the statements that you've made, but I've made my case based on passages from the start of the book all the way through Isaiah, past Isaiah, into the book of Revelation. And I don't know why that's not clear for you. I really don't. And I don't understand why you are getting so angry, because you and I knew that we would not agree that Jesus would be the Messiah. The point is I've proven how to identify the suffering servant. You don't have to believe that. That's fine. But I've proven how to identify the suffering servant using the universal passages that Christians and Jews agree upon to be about the Son of David. And if
not exclusively, the Tzemach is not exclusively according to rabbinic, not even rabbinic Judaism, according to the Tanakh. I showed you the Tzemach is described as the servant, so is Zerubbabel. The servant is, or the Tzemach is described as building the temple, so did Zerubbabel.
I really think that you're misrepresenting Judaism, because it.
Oh, really? You want me to read you the Rashi on it? Because
no,
I
have you to let me finish my statement.
Well, then don't tell me lies about rabbinic Judaism when you don't have anything to back it up.
Why would Judaism go out of its way to say this passage is about the Messiah, Son of David? In the same way, why would Judaism admit that Daniel 7 is exclusively about the Messiah, Son of David?
You're wrong again. It doesn't say that either.
What I'm saying is Judaism.
Are you kidding me? Like, you just read Daniel's dream. He says it refers to the kingdom of the high holy ones that will receive the kingdom.
So who is the one that comes to Pelach to worship?
Look, if you want to look at the context of what's being understood, it says they will inherit the kingdom. It doesn't say only the Messiah inherits the kingdom. You are completely misconstruing the context of all these passages. I have better answers.
Or Daniel 7:13.
Everybody can read Daniel 7:27. Read Daniel 7:27. See if it says only the Messiah inherits the kingdom. Only the Messiah. It's just Jesus. Like, come on. Like, none of it refers to
7. Look, I had a freaking call in to Tovia about this, and even he admits this. I can't believe that you're trying to deny this live on the air. This is crazy.
I'm trying to deny what? I'm trying to deny what?
That Daniel 7 is not about the Messiah.
I didn't say it's not about the Messiah. Oh, my goodness. How could you not get frustrated? How could you not get frustrated, Duzang? How in the world? How many times do I have to say everything is messianic? And you have over a dozen times. It's ridiculous. Like, maybe how can you debate with somebody?
Okay, you guys.
This is ridiculous.
Okay, it is ridiculous. Daniel 7:27. And the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under all heavens will be given to the people of the high holy ones, plural. It doesn't say the high holy one, who's Jesus the Messiah, as you would say in your debates with, your little sheep noises, right? So its kingdom is a perpetual kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey it. It does not say only the Messiah. Gabriel gives us a one-to-one interpretation of what each beast means. The individual beasts refer to kingdoms, plural, not just one person,
your interpretation.
No, I'm looking at Daniel 7:27. It says the kingdom and the dominion.
Verse 13, in my vision at night I looked, and there before me was one like a son of man, coming on the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient of Days. That's weird. How do you approach God?
Yeah, and what was this a
And
dream?
Courtney, was this a dream? Led into the presence.
Hold on, Yehuda. Go ahead. Courtney, go ahead.
And was led into his presence. He was given, this person was given authority, glory, and sovereign power. All nations and peoples and every language worship him. Now that word in Aramaic, pelach, means worship every time it's used.
So you're saying that Jesus is God. So you lied to me earlier. Wow.
No, let me finish.
Have we figured this out?
His dominion,
that you don't worship Jesus, and now you're
dominion. Listen to what I'm saying.
Exclusive to worship.
Hold on. Yehuda, hold on. Just let her finish real quick. Just let her finish.
His dominion is an everlasting dominion that will not pass away, and his kingdom is one that will never be destroyed. That's what Psalm 110 says, and that's what God said would happen. Now, you get mad at me because I tell you that every time, 10 times, that this word felach in the scriptures is used, it is used strictly of divine worship. Now, here's what the New Testament says about the Messiah, that by believing in him, you please the Father, because that's the way the Father set it up to be. I am sorry that that offends you, but it's universally agreed by Christians and Jews that Daniel 7 in that part is a reference to the Messiah who comes to the Ancient of Days, who is known as Hashem, and does what
not known as Hashem, not known as Hashem. And by the way, you are an outright liar.
Because I'm trying to be respectful.
Hey. You're an outright liar. You just told me earlier that you didn't believe Jesus was Hashem. You just now said that you worship Jesus. Oh, the Ancient of Days is worshipped, so he's not God. How can I debate with somebody who is literally lying to me through their teeth about what they believe?
You're just not.
You literally said you didn't worship him as a God. And now you're saying, oh, the Messiah is God. He's Hashem.
No.
That's the Shalom. Shame on you.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm going to give my perspective on Daniel 7 and show you.
I never said that, so you're misrepresenting me.
The host heard you say, deny that you were, like I can put him on, I'm sure you heard her say it.
You can look years worth of me not saying that Jesus is Hashem in the flesh. The reason why I said who is known as Hashem, because I'm trying to be respectful to you and not say the name of Yod He Vav He.
Oh, exactly. So come on, like you're worshiping Jesus as a God. Like don't.
No, I'm not.
Come on, look. Let's look at the actual. I don't look. We all know what you said. We're gonna look at Daniel for what it actually says. Okay, so Daniel 7:13 through 14. It says, "I saw visions in the night." Let's. I wonder if I can share the screen with this because this is really important, so that we can do a comparison of these two verses. So share, it might not share. I don't know why it's not sharing. Anyway, it's not sharing. So whatever. So I saw in the visions of the night, and behold, the clouds of heaven. One was like a son of man coming. He came up, and the Ancient of Days was brought before him. And he gave him dominion and glory and a kingdom. And all peoples and nations and tongues shall serve him. And his dominion is an eternal dominion, which will not be removed. His kingdom is one which will not be destroyed. Okay, now she leaves it there like all Christians do. They never like to read the next few verses where Daniel says, my spirit, Daniel, became troubled within its sheath, and the visions of my mind terrified me. So this is a vision that he doesn't really know what's going on. And so then in verse 16, it says, I drew near to one of those standing there, and I asked him the truth of all of this, and he's told it to me, and he let me know the interpretation of the matters. And then verse 17 says, these huge beasts, which are, that's what I wanted to see. Which are four kingdoms which arise from the earth. And the holy ones, verse 18, will receive the kingdom, and they will inherit the kingdom forever to all eternity.
That's the resurrection.
Scroll back up to where it says, he gave him dominion and glory, and peoples and tongues shall serve him. His dominion is an eternal dominion which will not be removed, and his kingdom will not be destroyed. So that looks very reminiscent of verse 18, right? right?
No.
Looks very similar.
Listen,
Oh, it has nothing to do with it.
you asked me now,
Okay, you're not convinced? Then let's go to verse 27 then.
You just asked
Let's
me,
go
do
to
you
verse
know what you
27
were
then.
talking
The
about?
kingdom,
Hold on. Let him read 27 real quick.
Okay.
the kingdom and the dominion. This is the interpretation of the dream, and then the dominion of the greatness of the kingdoms under all heavens shall be given to the people of the high holy one, not just the man, not just the Messiah. Messiah, including the rest of the kingdom, not just one person. That is what the man represented in the dream. The beast represented kingdoms. One beast represents one kingdom. One man represents Israel, the nation, the high holy ones, not one person. So, yes, is this a prophecy about the Messiah? Absolutely. Is it only about the Messiah? Absolutely not. And don't you forget it. Daniel ends the argument right there.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, but I think you're wrong. Because
Daniel's wrong. I don't know what to say.
no, I mean it's clear. You admit that it's about the Messiah. This is clear in the New Testament. He's going to come back.
Everything's about the Messiah. You haven't proven any exclusivity to the Messiah.
He's going to resurrect people, and they will live and be a kingdom of priests with him. That's what if you've just explained the gospel. Very good. I'm proud of you.
Okay. So you think that the Jewish people are going to learn from the Gentiles about Torah?
I think that, like Romans 2 says, a true Jew is inwardly, not just outwardly with circumcision.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you believe yourself to be a true Jew?
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know my lineage.
So if that's true, I want you to look at Zechariah 8, verse 19.
Mm-hmm.
Where it says,
the passage before it.
The fourth month, the fast of the fifth month, the fast of the seventh month, the fast of the 10th month shall be for the house of Judah, so Jews exclusively, for and happiness for happy holidays, but love, truth, and peace. So do you have any idea what this verse refers to? It clearly refers
the
to
destruction of the temple, which God says, if you read the chapter before, did you really do any of these for me? God is actually rebuking you, the Jew. So please be mindful of that before we continue.
Oh, okay. Well, when we keep reading, let's see if it's going to be the Gentiles who are, teaching the Jews a lesson, or if it's going to be the Jews.
You remember when I said who is a true Jew? Do you remember when I said
true Jew? Well, this verse explains who the true Jew is. Somebody who
is outwardly.
Oh, no. We're using Zechariah, okay? I don't care what your trash New Testament says. Zechariah 8:19 says, these are what Jews do. This is an identifier for...
No, that's what Jews did because of the destruction of the temple.
We still do it to this day. You don't do this. So how are you identified with this? Do you agree with me? Fine, I'll pull it on you. Is Zechariah 8 a future prophecy, or is it in the past?
Zechariah 8 is
is this future or past?
When it talks about the faithful city, it is regarding the New Jerusalem.
Exactly, it's future. You agree. So this is something that hasn't happened yet. So Zechariah 8:19, it's referring to, so the only people that I know of today, maybe you can find somebody else out there that even observe these fasts at all, or who have done this for, over 2 millennia since the destruction of the temple, even beyond that, are people who would identify today as traditional Jews. If you can show me other people who have that type of tradition for that many years, I would love to see them. But that's what Judah is defined as in the context of this verse. Would you agree with me?
Look at chapter 7. Are these not the words proclaimed through the Lord through the earlier prophets in Jerusalem? Oh, I wonder what he's talking about. And its surrounding towns were at rest and prosperous. So if you look, it says, verse 4, it says, then the word of the Lord of Almighty came to me. Ask all the people of the land and the priests, when you fast and mourned in the 5th, 7th, and for the past 70 years, was it really for me that you fasted? And what do you think God is saying to you? And then when he tells you in the resurrection that those days would be no longer for mourning, but for happiness.
Oh, interesting. You said in the resurrection, these days would be for happiness. Then why don't you celebrate these days as days of happiness? You probably didn't even know these fasts existed until I brought them up to you. That's the fact.
Wait, what? I'm sorry.
Okay, let me ask you this. You're a Hebrew rooter, right? So
Yes.
do you have celebrations on these days specifically saying the temple is, the resurrection happened, so now we're going to celebrate the fast of Tammuz, the fast of Gedalia, the fast of Tisha B'Av. Do you celebrate Tisha B'Av? I don't see any Hebrew rooters even acknowledging Tisha B'Av. Maybe you do. I don't see it, but hey, that's on you. Do you know Hebrew rooters who celebrate Tisha B'Av because the resurrection?
There are some Hebrew rooters that keep in accordance with more Jewish traditions and fasts and feasts. So I don't know why.
Okay, so do they celebrate? If you can show me a Hebrew rooter who has a specific celebration on the 9th of Av because
I don't
the
know
resurrection
every Hebrew rooter out
exactly
there.
it doesn't exist. So the point is, maybe there's one guy who really wanted to be like rabbinic Jews and whatever. But look, the fact of the matter is that this verse is irrelevant to Christianity. It's not mentioned in the New Testament at all, but it is a messianic prophecy. This is messianic, and I'll show you why. So said the Lord of hosts, there will yet be a time, future, that peoples and inhabitants of many cities shall come, and the inhabitants shall say to another, saying, let us go pray before the Lord and entreat the Lord of hosts. I will go too. And many peoples and powerful nations will come to entreat the Lord of hosts in Jerusalem and pray before the Lord. So said the Lord of hosts, in those days, when 10 men of all the languages and of the nations shall take hold of the skirt of the Jewish man and saying, let us go with you, for we have heard that God is with you. So this contextually is future. It is referring to Jews who, rabbinic Jews specifically, because unless you can show me Messianic or Hebrew rooters who have had a tradition of keeping these fasts or celebrating these fasts, like maybe you have a Hebrew rooter who's like, oh, well, maybe I better celebrate these fasts now because, now I've discovered this prophecy. Look, I would encourage you.
A person is
now on, I better
outwardly, nor is
now on, I better see you celebrating
outwardly or physical.
Now on, I better look. I don't care about your trash New Testament.
I know.
I care about the Tanakh. So when you look at this verse, you better be celebrating these fasts. You better be looking at these days and not mourning, because this is a resurrection, right? This is all about the resurrection. Your rooters have no connection to this. This is proof, tangible proof that
this is tangible proof. It's not proof. I don't know what you're getting at here, other than to say, hey, look, religious Jews keep festivals of mourning, and we don't even do it the right way. We do it because
we're the only ones who do it. You haven't done it at all. So this is demonstrating
we enjoy eating, as God said.
Who the Jews are, and this is messianic, by the way. It's future. This is actually
messianic. Tell me how.
Because it talks about why do you think the fasts are being celebrated?
Because guess what? You're no longer in bondage to sin. You're resurrected.
Because the temple is rebuilt, and every single one of those, every single one of those fasts is regarding the memorial of the destruction of the temple.
Yes, I know. I've already said this. You're not.
No, you went on some rant about sin or something. Like, look, that's part of it, but the full picture is that this is future in the Messianic era.
Do you see? You just focus. Oh, it's just a part of it. You don't give enough.
The Messianic era is a part of that, but the tangible thing about this being fulfilled is the fact that why will they be going to Jerusalem and celebrating?
That's all left. The New Testament.
Because the temple will be rebuilt in the Messianic age, and it will be the Gentiles, you coming to the Jews. Us.
You don't know if I'm a Gentile or not. So first of all, stop. Second,
I do based off of this verse. You don't have. No. I have ancestors who kept these fasts throughout the millennia.
Non-religious Jew.
Courtney, if you want to be a Jew, I would welcome you with open arms. I would love for you to become a Jew and reject, the Christian ways.
You don't have to reject Yeshua to be a Jew, by the way, just so you know.
You don't have to reject Yeshua to be a Jew?
Nope.
Well, that's true, but you're committing something. Usually it's a Avodah Zarah, and other times it's. Look, I'm questionable on you because you say that you worship Yeshua, and
no, I never said that. Now you're literally putting words in my mouth. I'm telling you what.
And why are you so concerned about the word Pelach meaning worship? This is literally a Dr. Brown argument. This is literally a Dr. Brown argument, which, by the way, doesn't hold water, right? Hishtachavu. You can find, words where it's not. I think I'm trying to the Oved.
is only ever used of divine worship. It is
Well,
not
if you
that
look at the Hebrew equivalent of it, I'll have to look up exactly what it was, but it's not used.
proskuneo in the Greek. Proskuneo.
What?
Proskuneo in the, pay attention.
I'm talking about the Hebrew, not the Septuagint. But look, the point is that we're looking at something. Look, I already demonstrated that it refers to the nation, not to the individual. So
My
that's
husband
all I need.
too.
I know you like to go on linguistic tangents and say every time it says this, but
Yeah,
that's not
because it
context
matters.
is key.
Linguistics
Context is
matter.
king.
You want me
Context
to
is king.
the
Go ahead.
semantics?
Context is king.
Hold on.
Context is king.
Go
That's the
ahead,
end
Courtney.
of the day.
Go ahead, Courtney. Go
I
ahead.
am being told here, I'm going to wrap up. I'll let you have the last word. I know it'll please you. My husband just pulled in. My children are going to come in. Mommy, and I need to wrap this up.
Yeah, go for
You
it.
are expecting me to ignore the linguistics when the very linguistics of words, semantics, structures, and everything make up the context. You say context is king. I say that as well. However, if there is a textual variant, or if there is a word that is off or something's going on, we have to look at it. Now, if you didn't know what words meant, you wouldn't have a clue, a fart in the wind to know what context was. So the point that I'm getting at is you're telling me to ignore context linguistics, which makes up the context. And that's where you and I have literally spoke past each other this entire time, that I've tried to prove linguistically that the context fits a messianic figure, whom is Yeshua the Messiah. Now, you don't have to agree with this. That's fine. Speaking of, here's my children. 1 second, guys. You can go ahead and give your final statement, and I'll wrap up after. I got to get them to the other room.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the debate. Like, I think the consistent theme throughout the entirety of this is that we have Messianic prophecy, and I think we went through, we had things that we agreed on, right? I showed some passages that refer exclusively to the Messiah that we both agreed upon. The passage in Isaiah 11, the passage in Isaiah 11:1, the stem of Jesse, the passage in Ezekiel 37:24, my servant David, Hosea 3 verse 5, my servant David in the end of days, Jeremiah 30 verse 9, David their king in the future. So all these are future prophecies that somehow we agree refer to the Messiah, son of David exclusively, yet every single other prophecy, from what I could see that Courtney brought up in this debate, was not exclusive to the Messiah, including Isaiah 53. I demonstrated that it contextually refers to Israel, including Zechariah 3 verse 8. I demonstrated that stone and the servant refer to Zerubbabel, referencing Haggai 2 verse 23. And also the building of the temple, which Jesus didn't fulfill. I also demonstrated that in Isaiah 7:14, that the Alma refers to Isaiah's wife, basically because he says contextually this refers to signs and symbols in Israel. It didn't say it had to be find fulfillment in the future only. He says, I challenge anybody, compare Isaiah 7:16 with Isaiah 8:4, and you will see this is a fulfillment of that prophecy. So that's all we needed to do. We didn't even need to go through a linguistic argument for that. I did it to humor Courtney, and that's why Deuteronomy 22 legally demonstrates that Betula is very specific to virginity, and Alma is not so much. And then Isaiah 9, we also went over that, and Courtney said it's only about the Messiah, and I said no, it says from now into eternity. And I didn't mention this earlier, but Hezekiah's name means God strengthens. The whole Kel Gibor argument there, and so there's it says from now into eternity. It doesn't say, oh, it only refers to 500 years in the future, and let's ignore Hezekiah, who was one of the greatest kings to ever rule over Judah. Let's just ignore that, right? And then all those prophecies came to pass. The king of Assyria was, destroyed. His army was destroyed through King Hezekiah. So all of that came to pass. And yeah, Psalms 110, that's another one. This is the continuous theme. She says it's only about the Messiah. I show it's about Abraham. It fits better with Abraham. So if we see this pattern over and over and over and over and over again, where a Christian says this is only about the Messiah, but I'm able to give or, you know, traditional Judaism is able to give a better answer using Tanakh only, which, by the way, that's what we did. We didn't use rabbinic commentaries here. Only when, you know, Courtney made the statement that was incorrect, that, you know, only traditional Judaism, and you can rewind the recording and see where she said that only rabbinic Judaism refers to this as only the Messiah. And then she sort of reneged on it. We can look at that later. But yeah, that's my position here, is that we need to distinguish between prophecy that is exclusive to the Messiah and prophecy that has fulfillment in its time. And we need to acknowledge the prophecy having fulfillment in its time. And if you want to say it refers to the Messiah, that's fine. But please do not say that the original context is null and void just to prove, you know, quote unquote, prove your ill-fated case for Jesus as Messiah.
Okay, I appreciate that. Sorry about the interruption. I've got just a couple minutes before my children have to take a bath. So I wanted to go ahead and give my final statement before we leave out of here. So what I have tried to do here today, and I think I've done without really having the opportunity to speak, although interrupted many times, I've proven that the promise of God is found in Genesis. I am the person that goes back from the very beginning of the Bible and works our way all the way through. When we look at the context, we have to build up the context to see who is this figure, because if anything can be messianic, then how can you disprove or not, especially when there's no temple and there's no way to prove the blood lineage of the Messiah since the temple is destroyed. So it would seem as though Daniel was correct. The promise is the scepter in Genesis 49:10, Numbers 24:17, and Psalm 45 and Psalm 60. And if you read these, you will start to notice this pattern where God says that he saves us with his right hand, and that he calls this right arm the scepter of Judah, and that if you continue to follow these same patterns, you get the idea that this figure who is messianic is called many messianic things, like the branch, he's called the scepter, he's called the banner, and he's essentially this foundation, which is mercy and being able to give justice properly, which is something that Israel was rebuked for many, many times, as the foundation in Psalm 89:14 says, which also leads us back again to the stone that the builders rejected. So my point is that we both universally agree on messianic passages about the reigning king. What we do not agree on is the suffering servant aspects. And the way to prove the suffering servant aspects is to prove universally agreed upon verses such as the branch, the semach. But if you have someone that says, oh, Judaism doesn't say that's messianic, then it makes it difficult, because then if you can renege on what Judaism actually says and agrees upon, then you have no foundation to go on. And this is unequal weights and measures. By the same standard that we judge the Old Testament, we, as in Christians, also judge our New Testament, and we have to be able to reconcile any differences. And I think that overall, I've proven that Isaiah 7, 8, and 9 are messianic passages. The passages ultimately project you into the point of his birth, and then project you into a time when this stone would have been rejected. And because God uses, again, what he says is, I will make known the end from the beginning. So this is why you see at the end of days, or in that day, or in that latter days, or in the year of the Lord's vengeance, which is very interesting because Isaiah 61 clearly is mentioned in Luke 4, that Assyria and all of these Babylonian figures, which are no longer in existence today, yet the Bible tells us that these figures, or figures like them, will be destroyed by the Messiah when the Messiah returns. And so Isaiah 7 and Isaiah 8 project you into that time. Isaiah 7 tells you that he's the banner, and he will whistle or hiss around the same time that he returns and destroys things. Jeremiah 50 verse 13. As you continue into Isaiah 8, the name Maharshala Hashbahaz tells you that this is what is going to be. The remnant that returns, that is the resurrection, when the point happens that the Messiah returns and destroys all enemies. As you continue on into chapter 9, it is about his actual walking, his ministry, him in the Galilee. And as you continue forward, you can get an even greater picture, of which we did not even go into, chapter 10 and 11 and so on and so forth, which tell you about Assyria and then tell you about the end days when the Messiah returns as the branch of Isaiah 11 and being that root that stemmed from Jesse. So again, the point that I'm trying to get across here is that we all agree on these king passages. We do not agree on the suffering servant passages. And Judaism doesn't have a monopoly on the scriptures to say what is and is not messianic. You have to be able to identify that using the Torah and then follow that passage all the way through. So I hope that you go back and you study these passages and you look and see why it is that the Messiah is lowly and yet riding on the clouds in Daniel 7, right as he resurrects people to rule in the kingdom after the order of Melchizedek. And for that time, I thank you all. I hate that it turned into a screaming match, but I really appreciate everyone's time, and shalom.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, shalom.
Yeah, thanks you guys for coming on. Thanks everybody for watching. If this is something maybe you'd like to do, information is down below. Yehuda, do you have a YouTube or a Facebook or anything like that you want to?
I advertise this on the Counter-Missionary Voice and One God of Israel. Yeah, I think that's what it is. I'm admins of those groups. So, yeah, and obviously this is, yeah, we'll see what happens with Dr. Michael Brown and Tobias Singer and all that. So we'll see. Yeah.
Courtney?
Yeah, so I have a YouTube channel called Biblical Apologetics, and there you will find a lot of studies where I dive into all of the things that I mentioned here, where it's concised down into a 30-minute video or less. That way it's not so overwhelming and like drinking from a fire hydrant. But everything that I've stated, you can see and view there, and I will continue to make videos. So if there are some things that I covered here that I have not yet made a video on, it will come, and you can always ask, and I will do my best to get it out as possible. As you can see, I am a mom as well, so bear with me. And thank you. Shalom Aleichem.
Thanks. Yeah, shalom Aleichem.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks, everybody.